With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Police officer David Carrick's 30-year sentence is to be reviewed for being too lenient.
Good morning, it's 6 o'clock. It's Wednesday, the 8th of February. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Thanks for your company leading our news this morning. The judge said he took monstrous advantage of women and acted as though he was untouchable. Now disgraced police officer David Carrick's 30-year sentence will be reviewed by the Attorney General.
3 British nationals are still missing and the death toll continues to increase following the earthquake in Turkey and Syria. Children and families have been pulled from the rubble overnight as the rescue mission for survivors continues.
A shake-up of Rishi Sunak's cabinet as the Prime Minister merges UK trade and business and creates departments for energy security and net zero.
We'll speak to the brand new Conservative chairman, Greg Hurwitz, just before 7 and ask if his reshuffle is enough to put the government back on top.
Today, we're in the strongest position in decades to compete with China or anyone else in the world. Anyone else in the world.
US President Joe Biden has delivered his State of the Union address overnight to Congress. Topics included police reform, gun control, and standing up to Russia.
And we would love to hear from you. All the usual ways, get in touch via email or via Twitter. And don't forget, let us know where you're watching or listening from and we'll give your home a shout out.
And on this Wednesday morning, this is our top story. Former police officer David Carrick was jailed for at least 30 years yesterday after being handed 36 life sentences for rape and numerous sexual attacks.
Well, the disgraced Met officer carried out a catalogue of violent and brutal sexual offences against 12 women over 20 years whilst he was serving on the force. Home Secretary Suella Braverman has called him a scar on our police.
But now the Attorney General has intervened and will review the sentencing after being inundated with complaints that it was initially too lenient.
Well, joining us this morning to give us her thoughts on this is the women's rights activist Patsy Stevenson. Welcome back to the programme. Good to see you again, Patsy. First of all, your view then of this 30-year sentence that's been given.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's saying it's too lenient, isn't it? 30 years for a minimum, that means that he can apply to come out. I don't think he should be able to, you know. It should be the longest sentence possible, in my opinion.
I mean, What does it take? I suppose it begs the question, if, you know, multiple counts of rape and taking advantage of that position doesn't warrant a full life sentence, then what does? And we saw it with Wayne Couzens, didn't we?
Yeah, and it's like he's been doing it for 20 years under the guise of being a police officer. Like, he used that, and he used that to control women and scare women. And, you know, it really annoys me that Suella Braverman constantly says, like, oh, it's just one bad apple, it's a scar on the police. Can we admit that the police is just covered in scars at this point, you know?
And if the sentence is reviewed and made stronger, what sort of message does that send out?
I mean, I think they still need to look at the issues within the Met. They've said time and time again, like, I was arrested at the Vigil 2 years ago. Since then, I've known for definite that activists have continued to put pressure on the Met and the police to sort out these issues for 2 years. And they've said, we're going to change, we're going to change, we're going to change. And nothing has changed. Again, this has happened and still probably nothing will change, which is really disappointing, because how many more incidents need to happen before something really drastic changes?
I don't know if you read or saw any of the comments made by the judge in sentencing, what your reaction was to them, just from a female perspective, and lots of people praising her yesterday. Just to quote some of it, she said to Carrick that you caused irretrievable devastation in the lives of those you abused. And she said the malign influence of men like you in positions of power stands in the way of a revolution of women's dignity.
Yeah, I mean, he's disgusting. I think it's, you know, it's something that a lot of women are actually dealing with at the moment from, you know, having their own trauma as well. But I know that women are exhausted, and hearing about the multiple cases in the media at the moment of women being missing or being murdered, and it's just, it feels exhausting. We're all so tired of it. And this guy was a police officer, and yet again, in a position of power, and yet again they're putting through the public order bill right now that gives them more powers to abuse, you know?
You obviously think that, Patsy, that this man should never see light of day again. He should never be allowed out of prison.
I mean, yeah, to be honest, I mean, I have my own opinions about the prison system anyway, but something like this is so vile. I cannot believe that he's got a minimum sentence of 30 years. It feels like it's nothing.
Well, to anyone who would think it is something, they would say he's 48 years of age, he's got a 30-year sentence. You know, he may get out for good behaviour, I don't know, but I suppose that good behaviour is too little, too late. What would you say to people who think, well, 30 years, that's a heck of a sentence?
I mean, I just don't think it's enough. I think, you know, even if I just don't think it's ever acceptable or should ever be lenient. Do you know what I mean? Like, why should you be okay with a 30-year sentence when you could just have a much longer sentence? To be honest, I don't think the sentence even matters. I think he just shouldn't have been a police officer. I don't know why he was allowed in the force.
We're speaking a little bit later on in the programme to a gentleman we've spoken to many times here at GB News, and he will be saying things along, along the lines of the fact that, sorry, I just totally lost my train of thought there.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're speaking to someone later in the programme.
We're speaking to somebody a little bit later on in the programme, and he'll be saying that this is the best time for victims of rape to come forward, that you'll be treated very seriously. Do you have faith in that? Do you believe that?
I mean, the Women's Equality Party recently shared what women have received in response to them coming forward about abuse that they've faced, and the comments are disgusting. They put the comments on New Scotland Yard to show how disgusting they were. They did that the other day. And I would encourage people to try and speak up as much as you can. You know, if you don't feel comfortable telling a police officer, maybe a friend or family member, someone else, just, you know, make sure people know about it. But I think it's horrible, because the only thing that we have where we can report these things is the police. So it's like, that's all we've got. So we have to, you know?
Well, Patsy Stevenson, you make a compelling case. Good to get your thoughts this morning. Women's rights activist and public speaker. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Patsy. And your views very welcome. You can add your say to all of this. If you had have been sentencing, if you had have been laying down the law, what sort of sentence would you give this man, Carrick, as a result of all of that? Because the Attorney General now to intervene after he avoided the whole life prison tariff. It went to 30 years, 36 life sentences, but a lot of people think that wasn't strong enough. What would be strong enough for this man, Carrick.
We're going to focus our attention on Turkey now. It's the topic everybody's been talking about. Unbelievable pictures on the front of the papers this morning. Just want to draw your attention to this one. You'll have seen or heard the story of this little baby pulled from the rubble, still attached via placenta to the mother, and tragically both mother and father were dead at the scene.
Awful.
Imagine going through labour, giving birth to a baby, dying in that trauma, that distress, and the little baby having to be cut from the placenta before being taken to safety. Absolutely devastating images. This one on the front of, again, a number of the papers on the front of the Financial Times. And you probably can't see it there. I've posted it on my social media overnight. It's a man holding the hand of his 15-year-old daughter who's trapped in the rubble, except she's dead.
And the thing,
dead.
She's dead. The thing is, of course, that it's not just the devastation this has caused, it is the scale of it. It's a country the size of Bulgaria that the scale of this earthquake has covered. So it's very, very hard for the rescue services to concentrate their resources where they should be, because they're just limited by pure scale. Atquer Rahman is in Turkey and works for the charity Global Relief Trust. So he's been helping dig people out of that rubble, the examples that we've just shown there, and he's going to tell us his story now. First of all, Atquer, very, admiration to you for what you're doing. It must just be so harrowing for you.
To be honest, I actually sent a message to my management team today, we were based in the UK, and I was saying, look, the morale of the team is very low. I don't know how I'm going to keep motivating them. Everybody's just so tired. We've been sleeping on the floor, been eating sort of soup for the past 3 days. We got wet clothes on for the past 3 days, and we're just exhausted. But, we're the lucky ones, do you know what I mean? We still got a bit of warmth, we're still having something to eat. The scale of this disaster is just so difficult to explain in words, really.
The reality is, the harsh reality is, the government, the resources, the rescue efforts are frankly overwhelmed because, as you say, there's no way they can attend every single one of these human tragedies. And those people who have survived will frankly, probably, in most cases, not make it.
Yeah. Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you though. What was the question?
I was just saying the harsh reality is many of those people who've survived will not be able to be reached by rescue services.
I think, look, Turkey is a country that's used to having earthquakes, but ultimately, no matter how prepared they are, nothing could have prepared them for what took place. I was in the Turkey-Syria border when the earthquake happened. It was aggressive. I mean, as I'm sitting here right now, I've just felt another tremor. There's been hundreds of tremors in the last 48 hours. And ultimately, when the roads have opened up and cracked open and bridges have collapsed, buildings have come up, some of them have turned sideways, and floors upon floors, you're talking 15, 16-story buildings where each floor has collapsed on top of each other. So getting equipment and military and the support to these places is going to take a long time. It's taken them, you're talking about 20-odd hours to get to all the places. But ultimately, each survivor that they find, they're probably spending several hours to try and get out because they have to use specialist equipment. This takes time, and then you've still got this issue of tremors. I've just felt another tremor literally a few seconds ago, and it's quite frightening. So there's danger. These buildings are not stable. It's very, very difficult, and the weather hasn't helped. A couple of days ago it was hailstorm. Last night it's absolutely freezing. This morning we woke up and there's patches of ice and snow everywhere.
But Atquer, you say it's a country that is used to earthquakes, but what about the building? It doesn't look as though that's reflected in the type of buildings that are erected.
It's a 7.8 magnitude earthquake, which is relatively high and serious. Yes, what we forget at Antakya, for example, where I am, is an ancient city. There are buildings, for example, mosques and churches, which are probably over a century old. And then there are buildings that have been here for a long time as well. Some of these buildings may not be up to the standards that are current standards. But saying that, I know there's one particular building that was built recently, meant to be for high standards, that's now currently sideways. For a minute and a half, this earthquake took place. I was surprised that the building I was in was not collapsed. We could talk about infrastructure, and of course there's going to be some weak buildings. But, God help, us in the UK. But if that was any city in the UK, we'd probably have seen something equally as bad.
Interesting. Attica, just tell us, what is the mood of people that you're speaking to? I mean, we've seen unbelievable images of pure jubilation as children are pulled out of the wreckage, but we've also seen the most tragic images of people clutching on to loved ones or standing in silence knowing that their loved ones are dead inside. I mean, can you capture the mood? How would you describe it?
The first moment I arrived in Antakya, I came across a woman who was screaming for help, and she was telling me that somebody is in the building. It was actually her husband. And when I managed to get in, I found a man whose foot I could see. I was checked for blood circulation. I managed to squeeze through a bit more, and I realized this gentleman had passed away at the scene due to being crushed. And having to tell somebody with a language barrier that, look, your husband's dead. For every amazing case that you're seeing of a survivor, you're probably finding 40, 50 deaths. There was another old elderly gentleman, and it broke my heart because he was probably in his 70s, probably close to the end of his life in terms of age. And he was in bed with his wife, and he doesn't know that his wife is next to him dead. Okay. And he's trapped. The building's collapsed on him. We managed to get some car jacks at the time to try and push some of the foundations up. And that was the most we could do at that moment. And then when I looked at his injuries, the paramedics came and they said there's nothing they can do. And the paramedics had to make a decision to move on to the next person who they could save.
All we can say, Attica, is good luck to you and the rest of the Global Relief Trust doing the rescue work that you're doing, so vitally needed, so vastly under-resourced as well there. Thank you very much indeed for your time this morning. We've got to leave it there.
Yeah, good luck. Thank
No
you.
problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The time is 16 minutes past 6. Let's bring you up to date with what else has been happening on this Wednesday.
Well, the private school at which a head teacher and her husband and child were found dead will reportedly close as police continue their investigation into what happened to the family. Emma Patterson's husband George and their 7-year-old daughter Letty were found dead at their home in the grounds of Epsom College in Surrey on Sunday. Police confirmed yesterday that homicide investigation had been launched, and they said Mr. Patterson legally owned a gun that was discovered at the scene of the tragedy.
Last-minute talks are being held today between firefighters and their employers as the Fire Brigades Union tries to strike a new pay deal for workers. If the talks fail, strike dates are expected to be announced as soon as tomorrow. Firefighters voted overwhelmingly to reject a 5% pay offer at the end of last year.
The Church of England could move away from the 1,000-year-old tradition of referring to God as He in the future. It's after priests asked to use gender-neutral terms instead. Religious leaders say a new project on gendered language will begin this spring, with any changes to be approved by the Church's decision-making body, the Synod. That means all the hymns, the Lord's Prayer, Our Father, any reference to Jesus, well, I suppose you can't deny he was a man, has to be rewritten or unwritten. Mm-hmm. It's going to cause upset. I've never, ever taken offence at any reference to God as a man, I must admit. There's lots of examples of where women are being, held back, but I don't see it in the Lord's Prayer.
I'm sure of all the things the Church of England has to do, that should be top of the list. So what would we call, it'd be like Star Trek, we'll call God now...
Oh, Holy One.
The Creator, it'll be things like the Creator, or what is the name if you believe in God, wherever your God is, and...
We call them they.
They?
It'll be they.
They? Anyway.
Let us know your thoughts. We're not keen on that one.
I'm not keen on that one.
Are we keen on Rishi Sunak's reshuffle yesterday? That's the question of the morning.
Well, today's going to hold the first meeting of that new cabinet, and so there's a man, sea of hands, Greg Hands, Right Honourable Greg Hands. He's the new Conservative Party chairman. Let's go to Dan Fawlty, who's head of digital news at GBNews. It's so boring, all of this. A new department there of energy, security and net zero. It just goes on.
So boring, it hasn't made any of the papers, really, this morning.
It is boring. It really is boring.
And the thing is, this keeps happening. This is our 5th cabinet reshuffle in under 12 months. This, in the past, cabinet reshuffles were a big deal that wouldn't happen very often. When you get to the point where they're happening every other month, quite frankly, it just, I think, shows just how unstable, this government is on many levels.
So is this deliberate strategy on Rishi's behalf, do you think, to try and be bland, not controversial? Or do you think he just is unaware, perhaps, that he's not particularly going to shift things in the polls with this kind of policy, this kind of movement?
Well, I think this all started from the fact that he had to replace his party chairman when Nadeem Zahawi was sacked over an investigation into his tax affairs. And I think that was used, therefore, as an excuse for a wider shake-up. I don't think if that had happened, we would have seen this reshuffle. But following that, it was like, this is the right opportunity, we can do something here. He says that the changes that are being done will just help improve the Whitehall operation to allow him to deliver on his priorities.
Expensive, though.
So, expensive, yes. Distraction, well, he would argue that if it ends up working, then it's worth it. I think what's really interesting for all the dullness is how much he's tried to balance this out to please everyone. So we've got Greg Hands coming in as party chairman. He was a Remainer and is MP for Chelsea. So as his deputy chairman, he's gone for Lee Anderson from the Red Wall in Nottinghamshire and a Brexiteer. So he's trying to please all of his party.
The Red Wall Rottweiler, as some of the papers describe him.
Yeah, absolutely. He's well known for being willing to speak his mind, and that could cause some issues down the line if he's willing to continue to just speak out now that he's in a government position. But we've also seen, for example, with this new department they've made, this energy security and net zero department. You've got energy security, which many people say is so important right now with gas prices the way they are. But he wants to then also show that he's not forgot net zero at the same time. Everything with Rishi Sunak is a delicate balancing act. Everything he's doing is... He'll be happy that it's boring and bland because, quite frankly, he'd say, I'm not causing any ruptures, I'm keeping the party all united and on side.
But you've been asking our viewers and our listeners whether or not this Rishi shuffle will have shifted things for them, whether this will help them in the polls. What have they been saying?
Yeah, so we do every week our People's Polling where we find out representatively across the country what people think, and normally the Conservatives are massively trailing. They were on 22% last week, the last time we did it. So we did our poll and say, what do people think of this new government, these cabinet reshuffle? Will it change your opinion? 79% of our viewers said no. So I think that shows you just how much work there is still for Rishi Sunak to do.
Yeah.
All right.
Nothing dynamic, you see, nothing really controversial or whatever about that. But we do have Greg Hands on at what time, Ted?
2:45. Yeah, and 7:15, yeah.
Well, that's in 20 minutes.
20 minutes, yeah.
20
Safe pair of hands are like that. The headlines are going to enjoy that headline or whatever it might be.
Dan, thanks very much indeed.
Speaking of dynamic and capturing imagination, did Joe Biden do that last night in his State of the Union address? We'll be discussing all of that after the break with the former advisor to the Clinton and the Bush administrations. But first, here's your forecast.
Good morning, I'm Alex Deakin and this is your latest weather update from the Met Office. Another frosty one across much of England and Wales this morning. Some dense patches of fog around as well. Further north, the winds are really picking up. We have a Met Office warning across the far northwest. You can see why when you look at the pressure chart. High pressure dominating across the south. The isobars well spaced out, but really squeezing together, bringing very strong winds across the far northwest at the moment. As I said, we have a Met Office warning in place. Also, fog patches dense this morning in the south. south. Not great on the roads, steadily clearing through the morning. Should be gone by lunchtime, and then plenty of sunshine for most of England and Wales. But further north, more clouds, not just turning very windy, but a spell of heavy rain for a time later today in the far northwest. It will be quite mild in northeastern Scotland, 10, maybe 11 Celsius, but it will be windy here. Lighter winds further south, highs of 7 or 8, feeling pleasant in the sunshine. Now, the rain will pep up and push south through this evening across Scotland and Northern Ireland. So a spell, an hour or two of heavy rain before it pushes into England and Wales and then kind of fizzles out. So not much rain here, just things turning a bit damp. Clearer skies following, so the
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Good to see you again. Time approaching 6:30.
Still to come on the programme this morning, as we were saying just a moment ago, Greg Hurwitz is due to join us in a few moments' time. He is the brand new Conservative Party chairman in Rishi's cabinet reshuffle. We'll be talking to him about his new role just before 7.
7:45, after Isabel experienced a traumatic cycling incident with her family at the weekend, we're going to be discussing how to stay safe on a bike.
Yes, especially with children. It was a bit of a nightmare. So we'll talk about that, 7:45. And we'd love to hear your views throughout the programme. As always, you know what to do.
President Joe Biden delivered his State of the Union address overnight and attempted to bring the country back together after a turbulent start to the year.
Yes, the president said that the United States was recovering from the economic turmoil of the pandemic, but said that there was more work to do.
Today, COVID no longer controls our lives. And 2 years ago, democracy faced its greatest threats in civil war. And today, though bruised, our democracy remains unbowed and unbroken. You know, we're often told that Democrats and Republicans can't work together. But over the past 2 years, we've proved the cynics and naysayers wrong. Yes, we disagreed plenty. And yes, there were times when Democrats went alone. But time and again, Democrats and Republicans came together to defend a stronger and safer Europe.
Well, joining us now for more analysis of what the president had to say and from all the news from overseas, former advisor to the Clinton and Bush administration, Steve Gill. Steve, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Well, how did President Biden do?
Well, you know, these State of the Union addresses are about a lot about pomp and visibility, but they rarely have any long-term effect for a president of either party. I think that's going to be the case with President Biden. I don't think he's going to get much of a bump out of his speech, and whatever bump he gets really isn't going to last very long. You know, at times he was kind of mumbling, at times he was incoherent, and then he kind of went into some of these rants and screaming portions like he's been doing of late, kind of like the next door neighbor, old guy yelling, "Get off my lawn." So I'm not sure that the tenor and tone is really going to carry weight with the American people any more than the fact that he was trying to promote, which again his administration has been claiming the last few weeks, how great the American economy is when we still have high inflation, high gas prices, very low labor participation, and a lot of concerns over what's going on with our border. So I think overall, he's not going to really win many converts to his view of what's going on in America when the facts tell a different story.
You know, I think it's one of those set-piece events where the world kind of tunes in, and it's just a real shock, I think, for me. I don't know what you think, Eamonn. When you see him speak and you just think, my goodness, he's 80. Is he OK? He seems frail. How's he doing in the, you know, popularity, opinion, approval ratings over in the States?
Yeah, the interesting thing is, and you raise a great point, that if he runs for re-election, which he's saying he's going to do, if he gets re-elected, he'll be 86 years old at the end of his second term. And he does look frail. When he walks, when he talks, he seems incapable of really commanding a strong performance. And that's reflected in the polls. Even Democrats, his own party, are saying they're, you know, in huge numbers, they don't want him to be their nominee to run for president again. And I think that I don't think the speech is going to change much of that. The big winner tonight, you had the youngest governor in the United States, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who was Donald Trump's press secretary for a while, newly elected governor of Arkansas. She did the Republican response to Joe Biden's speech. Now, typically these responses compared to, you know, the big hall in Congress look pretty weak. You almost look like a hostage video. But she did a great job and really laid out the criticisms and the fact-checking of Joe Biden's speech. And I think she was really the big winner tonight, not Joe Biden.
You know, she was always, whatever your politics under the Trump administration, she was always really impressive at those briefings, wasn't she? The way she could bat anything away, whether it was talking about injecting bleach or whatever. She had that kind of ability to just dodge a question. She's so slick. So what was the kind of Republican assessment then of how the Democrats are doing?
Yeah, I think that, again, the pushback was that his glowing claim of accomplishments in the economy are just not borne out by the facts. And then he did kind of go on this tough talk about how we're, you know, pushing back against China aggression when we just had this spy balloon float across our country days and got shot down after it was out of the country. So, you know, the claim that he's like, you know, kind of this tough foreign policy guy is not carried out by that, nor the way we left Afghanistan, nor the continued chaos that we see in world affairs. He's not a guy who's commanding great respect on the world stage. And I think, again, as Americans look at him, they're not seeing the success pattern. And when he brought up during his speech fentanyl, there were actually some boos among Republicans because fentanyl is killing Americans. We're having a 9/11, 3,000 dead every other week in America from this fentanyl flowing from China across our southern border along with millions of illegals. And again, I think that was probably one of his weakest moments where he tried to claim that somehow he's tough on drugs and tough on China and going to continue to secure the border, none of which is true.
What is, forgive me, you've lost me a bit there, Steve. What is fentanyl? What is that? What's that about?
Fentanyl is a chemical component that is being manufactured in China, then being provided to the drug cartels in Mexico, and it's being shipped across the border, in some cases in pill form that look like candy. Literally, we have 3,000 Americans dying every other week from this fentanyl poisoning as part of drugs. And it is, which is, again, like a 9/11 every other week. And the border not being secure is the reason it's flowing in. We have confiscated about 5 tons of fentanyl across the border when literally a shoebox full could kill every man, woman, and child in America.
Gosh. Well, thanks for opening our eyes on that one. Steve, we've got to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for an insight as to what was in the State of the Union address and how the President did and what opinion on him is. We've got to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed.
We'll leave that there and we will pick up the papers after this short break with Chris Akabusi and Emma Wolf. See you in a moment. He's the king of breakfast TV and he's back. Eamonn Holmes back on the TV
Surprised
with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes. Already to bless.
Oh, Eamonn. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamonn Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here's how the front pages are shaping up on this Wednesday morning.
The Mail says even God could be going gender neutral as the Church of England debate whether to stop referring to the Almighty as He.
The Times reports that the death toll may be over 20,000 with the earthquakes in Turkey and Syria. 20,000.
Unbelievable. The Express says the headmistress of Epsom College made a call to her sister minutes before she was shot dead by her husband.
And the Mirror leads with BP's spoils of war as the oil giant sparked outrage after announcing it made profits of £23 billion.
And some light relief. The Daily Star says 42% of people cannot remember the last time they laughed out loud.
Well, that's quite sad.
Yeah, I think that's light relief. That's more depressing news in a day filled with very sad news.
I don't look at you and laugh out loud. There is always something.
People always say they laugh at me, not with me.
No, that's not true. That's not true.
I am a funny person, but not intentionally. That's what I'm told.
All right, it could be. Well, I tell you, Chris Akabusi is a funny person. He
That's
radiates
true.
laughter, don't you, my
I
friend?
love my laughter.
Yeah.
I was once introduced on stage as Chris Akabusi, the guy with a gregarious laugh, very hard to ignore, but well worth the effort.
Yeah. And there it goes. But the serious thing about that, I think it's quite sad that 43% of people say they cannot remember when they
But
last
I think it's a
laughed.
sign of the times. It's miserable at the moment, isn't it?
Listen, I never have meetings or company with my children, who are 30 down to 20, my brothers, who are a bit older, without laughing.
Yeah,
without laughing.
that's the one thing.
Emma Wolf.
Emma Wolf,
Emma
here
Wolf,
too.
yeah, incidentally.
My 2-year-old is really good for sometimes just lying on the floor and laughing. That's the thing. I mean, children are impossible and
funny.
frustrating,
Yeah.
but they will make you just laugh. It's such a good, simple kind of, reminder that
And then
that's
there are
kind of
other
what we
people
should be
who
doing.
will suck the energy out of a room and suck the laughter, and they are to be avoided, it has to be said.
Indeed.
So Emma and Chris with the papers. And Emma, we're going to begin with this David Carrick sentencing, which is leading for us today, and the prison sentence. So we got 36 life sentences, which totaled 30 years. Many people saying not enough.
Yeah, certainly not something to laugh about. This will make David Carrick, basically the rapist policeman, the serving Met officer, the formerly serving Met officer, eligible for parole in 30 years. This was the sentence handed down yesterday at Southwark Crown Court. It's already being reviewed by the Attorney General after many complaints. There's a sense that this was absolutely unduly lenient. There's an unduly lenient sentence scheme. And already this sentence is being reviewed.
Let me ask you, as a woman, right, so you might get a lot of people saying, 30 years, you've got 30 years. Gosh, that's a long time. You'll be nearly 80 by the time, if he's still alive, that he would get out. As a woman, what do you think? Do you look upon that differently?
It's hard to put a number on his... I mean, you have to remember, this was 49 charges over a 17-year reign of terror. Against 12 women. And I think for women, and I'm sure maybe for men too, but for women what it does is undermine one's sense that you can trust the police, that when someone flashes their warrant badge and says, stop your car in the middle of the night, or when someone comes up to you in a dark street and says, I'm a police officer, or let me into your property, you simply don't trust them anymore. And I know that's not fair, because there are many good police officers out there serving now.
As a man
But this
rapist,
whole scandal, that's what it's done.
As a man, you could accept a 30-year sentence because he's a man, but because he's a police officer, it should be more. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not really. I mean, I don't know whether 30 years is enough. I mean, what, 30 years? What do? You sit in prison and reflect on your crimes. I think it's more about...
There's so many questions about this, because I know the government said yesterday that they are going to try and remove his pension so that when he does get released, will he be, what, 78, something like that?
Yeah.
But what, genuinely, not that I feel sorry for him, but what does happen to you if you've been in prison for 30 years, you're a convicted rapist, and you've got no pension? Like, what do you live off? Does he draw, benefits?
I don't really care.
No, I know, but why not just lock him up until he dies, rather than have to support him?
And it's more about what do they do in prison? What does he ever genuinely repent? Is there any way of making reparation to those women? I don't even think it's about the number.
The judge said he didn't show any remorse. Cried, but out of self-pity.
And the Met are now facing quite a string of further allegations, so they're obviously in crisis at the moment. Other police officers coming up for review.
Chris, any forgiveness for the man, or...?
Well, 30 years is a long time. He's done, obviously, he's leveraged his power. Like Emma said, he's brought shame onto the police force. But 30 years is a long time. 78 is certainly... I mean, if he makes it to 78, he won't be the man they want in there. You would think that 30 years would be a long time to repent of his sins and of his waywardness. It doesn't help the young ladies that he's... he's dealt a wrong one with, but 30 years is a long time, and there are many people who've gone into jail for murder who are out quicker. So,
It's shocking when you actually think about it.
Yeah, 30 years is a long time.
Yeah.
But it could go the other way, couldn't it? He could get out for good behaviour.
No, I think 30 years is the least. That's minimum, yeah.
Eligible for parole in 30 years.
As Emma said, basically, we don't really care. Just, hope it's long and hope it feels long too.
Yeah. Oh, well, it won't be a very nice place for a police officer in the correction facility.
He's going to have a tough time.
Yeah.
Chris, talking of tough times, let's talk about the absolutely terrible human tragedy that is unfolding not far from our shores in Turkey. And it's the combination, isn't it, of these pictures of hope, these children being drawn out of the rubble, with the absolute harrowing tragedy of people with no hope of being back together with loved ones. And it makes me cry, actually, frankly, when I read some of these stories and watch some of it. It's really sad.
Yeah, I mean, I think sort of nature with the earthquake has really shown how brutal it can be, red in tooth and claw. And the built environment, man-made built environment, has taken a battering this time on the fault lines by Syria and Turkey. But the Times has got a great picture, and the reason I like this picture is out of darkness there comes great light. There's so much death, purported to be 8, 9, 10,000 by the end of this day. And the Times has got this picture of a young baby whose family is devastated, all gone, so mum, dad, 4 brothers and auntie. I heard you speaking earlier, she was attached still to her mother. I don't know whether the mother was alive at the time.
She was dead when they cut the placenta.
Right, so they cut the placenta, but so that in itself is a harrowing experience for the young baby. But what they've got a juxtaposition of the photograph, and a picture paints 1,000 words. And on that picture, you've got her, peace and tranquility, being saved from the ordeal in one shot, and then in the little inset, you can see this chap with basically a rag doll who's been ripped from the debris, devastation and rubble. And you've got this juxtaposition, life in all of its fullness and life just grabbed from death. And only pictures can do that, because you look at that picture and you run away with your own imagination, sensation, your empathy. You talked about almost crying or feeling like crying. I think we're all parents here, and I think of my children, and I think of the warmth and love that they have. And this young baby, her start in this stark reality of nature read in tooth and claw.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, well said. Emotional stuff.
Emma, Chris was saying, out of the darkness comes light, which I think is a biblical quote, isn't it?
Yes, indeed it is, yes.
So that gets us to the Church of England. This is front page of the Mail. They're saying, what's the headline there?
Could be changing
Now,
quite
even
radically.
God could be going gender neutral.
Gender neutral,
Yeah.
okay.
So Anglican bishops are preparing to have a major project on gendered language, and they're going to start looking at whether we should stop referring to God as he and him, and even whether we should stop saying our Father. I'm not deeply religious, but the idea of not being able to say our Father just feels wrong. What are we going to say? Our parent, our person, our... So here we go. Yes, God will, for henceforth, possibly be referred to in gender-neutral, non-gendered language.
Yeah.
See, I don't read much poetry at all, or any really, but some of the hymns I grew up singing, some of the most beautiful poetry, essentially, isn't it? And to imagine that all being pulled apart.
Even the Lord's Prayer, Our Father.
Stunning, yeah.
There's something about that to me is so comforting. The idea, it doesn't even feel gendered. Our Father, it just feels like a universal parent looking down on us in some way. It comes from our childhood, it comes
Exactly,
from
I'm saying ever since we were a young child, we were brought up on the Lord's Prayer. The challenge I have with this, at the moment, it's the Church of England who are quite often irrelevant in a lot of things these days. But for me, it is... There are many, many fundamentalist Christians, of which I was definitely one back in the 80s and 90s, for whom this is not an academic exercise. They really worship their Father in heaven, and it informs all of their days. And my challenge is that for those people who are traditionalists, who build their faith on 1,000 years of history, will be challenged when they will seem like antiquated, when they want to refer to their Heavenly Father. And it really is somebody that's so intimate to them. Like Jesus, their Father, the Holy Spirit, is intimate with them. And so when the Church of England, they're messing around with it academically, wanting to fit in with the current sort of politically correct language, know that down the road, some real hardcore Christians who really believe every day are going to be challenged with this.
There's lots of people who aren't hardcore Christians, and I've spoken to many of them today, and all women, Emma, Isabel, amongst them here, and it doesn't matter to you. This doesn't seem to offend you that God would be referred to.
Offends me more that they're messing, perhaps, with a tradition and a Christian tradition than my sensibilities as a feminist.
All that thought, guys, and get in touch. Let us know what you have to say about God. Or will Hail Mary? Should I take offence about Hail Mary?
Mother Nature. Will we have to change Mother Nature?
And Mary, the Mother of God. As
Mary,
you say,
Mother of God.
That too is a wonderfully maternal, comforting
Yes, she did give birth to him.
All right, well,
that's
got us all talking. Right, let us know what you think. We're going to be back after the break. We're hoping to talk to the new Conservative Party Chairman, Greg Hurwitz, as well as back with the guys after this.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The time is just quickly approaching 10 minutes to 7. Are we going to the new Conservative chairman? We are indeed. There he is. Let's anoint him here. The Conservative Party chairman, the new one, Mr. Greg Hurwitz. Very good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning.
Now, tell me this. I assume, I haven't seen it in the headlines yet, I don't know why. I assume you'll tell us now the Conservative Party is in good hands.
I like it. Yeah, the Conservative Party's in good shape, actually. Membership is increasing. Our financial position is improving. The party is in a good position. We've obviously got important local elections this year. And we've got a general election to look forward to next year. So there's plenty to do.
OK, I'm assuming all the due diligence has been done on you. You're not going to have any dodgy tax returns?
I'm fully up to date with all of my taxes and no problem there at all.
And are you planning on perhaps on publishing them or any update on when the Prime Minister might be publishing his?
Well, look, I think that is something for the Prime Minister. I think he's already committed to do that, and I'm sure he will do in due course.
Greg, got to ask you, you seem an upbeat character. You seemed very positive yesterday. Anytime I saw you being interviewed or reporters throwing questions at you. Why is it that so many people didn't want this job? We hear people turning it down. We know, in fact, Grant Shapps didn't want it again. And it could be a bit of a poisoned chalice. Why did you take it on?
Well, look, I'm not aware of that. I don't think that is the case. I think the time taken was to do the wider reshuffle. You'll have seen that Rishi has created a couple of new government departments to bring a sharper focus to the government on things like energy security, on science and technology, and making sure his 5 priorities are seen through. I'm really looking forward to doing this job. You know, it's a fantastic opportunity to be chairman of the Conservative Party. I've been a member of the party for 37 years. I've served the party at many different levels. I've been a local councillor. I've been a member of Parliament for 18 years. I've been a government minister for most of the time since 2011. So I think it's a fantastic opportunity. And having a good 18 months or so for the general election.
I presume you think you know your people, right? You know your party. It's interesting, though, that your deputy chairman seems to be a different type of politician than you. and may know that party in a different way. Lee Anderson, he might be more red wall, where you are more blue wall. Together, does that make a good combo, or is that divisive?
No, I think Lee Anderson and I will work very well together. I think Lee is a fantastic asset for the Conservative Party. Of course, we've got other deputy chairmen, we've got vice chairman as well, so it's not just me and him. We've got a great team at Conservative headquarters. We've got a really fantastic team of staff, all dedicated to making sure that Rishi Sunak wins next year's general election.
I was going to say, that's the general election, but then the local government elections right before them. You mightn't be so confident in saying that you'll do well there. And if you don't do well there, how do you then shape that? How do you then frame that in terms of, well, actually, you know, that's a bit of a wake-up call. It's a mid-government election, whatever. We've got the big one to come, the general election. I mean, you're probably going to have to take a bit of a punch to the belly, really, on this one, and then regroup after that, realistically?
Well, I think it's not a secret to say that this year's local elections will be a difficult set of local elections for the party. But the important thing is that we do as well as we can and set the platform for a general election next year. Obviously, local elections this year will also be fought on local issues. There's an interesting set of the country that's up for local elections. There's a few directly elected mayors as well. So there'll definitely be an interesting contest this year. But our main focus is going to be on making sure we've got everything in place to win next year's general election, to take on an unreformed Labour Party that lurks behind Sir Keir Starmer. I think 160 Labour MPs out on picket lines last week. You know, it's this sort of thing that we need to bring to the British people, that the Labour Party behind Sir Keir Starmer is an unreformed a party that is still very much characterised by the people that Jeremy Corbyn put in place.
I just want to ask you about a couple of the other stories doing the rounds this morning before we let you go. Our top story this morning about the sentencing of the police officer, disgraced police officer David Carrick. Many people calling his sentencing unduly lenient. Now in the hands of the government, the Attorney General looking at it. Your views, your own personal views, Party of Law and Order, do you think it's unduly lenient?
Well, look, I think there'll be a proper process for that, and I don't want to prejudge that process. But I think all of us are absolutely shocked at what has happened, that somebody who is trusted with public safety should so flagrantly abuse that position and be such a danger to public safety of many women. So I think that is something which, of course, is going to be looked at. It wouldn't be right for me to prejudge that process. But I share, I think, the shock of the country as to what that man was allowed to get away with.
And your reaction to the blow for the government yesterday in the Lords when they defeated your attempts to try and clamp down on slow marching. Big attempt by the government to try and clamp down on protesters, and that's been stopped in the Lords and it can't be pursued again.
Well, look, I think it shows that the Labour Party isn't serious about protecting the public going about their daily lives. You know, what we saw, particularly during last year, were a lot of demonstrations where people sort of recklessly trying to prevent the members of the public going about their daily lives. I think that shows where the Labour Party is on this. And the Conservative Party, we are very much on the side of the law-abiding public wanting to get to work, get about their daily lives. That's what it's all about. And it shows, I think, where the Labour Party's priorities are, which are not in line with the British people.
Well, there you are. That's Greg Hurwitz. He is the new Conservative Party chairman, and they reckon they probably chose him because he comes out punching. There he is. He's led 2 or 3 punches on the Labour Party. Yeah, he's got those hands working. Yeah, quite
getting
shifty.
his hands dirty, rolling up his sleeves.
He's the Muhammad Ali of the Conservatives, really. There, the big hitter. Good luck on your job, Greg Hurwitz. Thanks for your time this morning, and we appreciate it. Got to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. I noticed Mr. Hans out there in where was he? Westminster Green,
Yes.
or whatever. It's freezing.
I
out there.
know, we've made them
Freezing.
stand outside.
Tell
They're
you
very
that.
good.
And certainly in the south of England, a lot of fog.
Yeah.
North of England, I think you've got a
Bit
lot
of a pea
wind.
super this morning.
Yeah.
I don't like it when it's foggy. It's a bit
It was
scary.
old London town.
It was. It's sort of
It's like-
Victorian.
Yes.
We've still got Chris Akabusi and Emma Wolf standing by. Just a quick reaction, first of all, to the government interview.
I liked him. Safe pair of hands. You can see he's an accomplished career politician. I like the way when you threw things at him, how articulate he was, political answer, reframed it, delivered what he wanted to say, hammer the Labour, Labour's still red, Ed's still in the bed, Ed Miliband, he's talking. You know, you can see this guy, safe pair of hands.
10 out of 10 you give
wow.
it. Okay, Emma?
I feel deeply uninspired by this reshuffle. It sort of feels like the same old faces being slightly recycled around and around and around. But, I mean, let's try and get excited about the reshuffle, shall we?
We can't get excited.
Wouldn't it be great to have some brand new faces, some brand new
Well, he's a
people?
brand new face.
People like Kemi Badenoch, who we all got... I mean, I got
Lots of
very
people haven't heard
enthusiastic.
of Greg Hands this time
No,
yesterday.
he's
Really?
Yeah,
I thought he was a bit of an old face.
If you're in Chelsea and Kensington, you might. But for most of us, we don't know who he is. I don't know who he is.
Yeah, but
I've just seen
also
him for
the
first time.
party chairman isn't a sort of a particularly scintillating role. Obviously, it's hit the headlines because of Nadeem Zahawi's misdemeanours, but it isn't like the most high-profile role.
Yeah, no, but what's really important, you can see he's gathering the troops. You know, he's their
I was impressed.
commander-in-chief.
I was impressed with him.
You know what I mean? So you can see, and when I thought Conservatives down and out, you look at him and think, hang on, they're going to come out punching.
Yeah.
They're coming out punching.
Well, Labour described it yesterday as rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, didn't they? Probably correct. You're taking it back now.
Well, no. It's probably correct, but they're going to give it a good job because that guy was impressive. And look, let's see when he's under pressure. But first time I've seen him come out, you guys were brilliant with your interviews, film a few fastballs, bam, bam, bam.
Well, and also we're gearing up for this election next year, so things are going to get exciting. You know, we've been talking about 2024 for so long, haven't we? Oh, general election 20. But it is now next year.
And
so
do we really want our politics to be excited? We've had this
I got hooked on it, though, because of all the Boris nonsense and then Liz Truss and all of that.
Can't we just have a bit of peace and quiet for a while?
He's not that, though, is he? That's what I'm saying. He's a safe pair of hands. You can say he's a traditional Tory, safe pair of hands. The juxtaposition is the Lee Anderson. Now, that's going to be interesting.
That's exciting.
A couple of gaps there.
Yeah.
But you can see with him, Blue Conservatives, I've got you, we're safe, we're coming out punching.
Okay. Yeah, but look, we've still got the Dominic Raab thing, we've still got Boris Johnson inquiries, all of that. So, you know, it's not calm yet.
Waiting list,
More to come
etc.
from these guys in half an hour's time, just over that. And we're going to have more from Turkey on that terrible earthquake situation.
See you in a moment.
I thought Metropolitan Police Officer David Carrick's 30-year sentence is to be reviewed for being too lenient.
Good morning. It's bang on 7 o'clock. It's Wednesday, the 8th of February. Thank you very much for your company this cold morning. You're watching and listening to Breakfast on GBNews with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Leading the news this morning, the judge said he took monstrous advantage of women and acted as though he was untouchable. Now disgraced police officer David Carrick's 30-year sentence will be reviewed by the Attorney General for being too lenient.
3 British nationals are still missing, and the death toll's continuing to increase following the earthquake in Turkey and Syria. Children and families have been pulled from the rubble overnight as the rescue mission for survivors continues.
A shake-up of Rishi Sunak's cabinet as the Prime Minister merges UK trade and business and creates departments for energy security and net zero.
I think Lee is a fantastic asset for the Conservative Party. Of course, we've got other deputy chairmen, we've got vice chairman as well, so it's not just me and him. We've got a great team at Conservative headquarters. We've got a really fantastic team of staff, all dedicated to making sure that Rishi Sunak wins next year's general election.
It's the new Conservative chairman, Greg Hurwitz, who just a few minutes ago told us he thinks that his deputy, Lee Anderson, and the team will work well together.
This morning, we'll also be talking about a traumatic cycling experience that my family experienced at the weekend. We'll be getting some top tips on how to stay safe on your bicycles, especially if you are riding with children.
Get in touch the usual way. Let us think what you think Greg Hans should be doing now that he is the new Conservative Party chairman. What would you like seen to be done? If you don't vote Conservative, that might be quite entertaining.
18 months, he said. He's got 18 months to sort things out. Can he do it? Let us know. Safe pair of hands. Oh, there's so many analogies, aren't there?
That's the email address there, and you can tweet us as well.
OK, our top story this morning. Former policeman David Carrick was jailed for at least 30 years yesterday after being handed 36 life sentences for rape and numerous sexual attacks.
The disgraced Metropolitan Police officer carried out a catalogue of violent and brutal sexual offences against 12 women over 20 years whilst he was serving, with the Home Secretary Suella Braverman calling him a scar on our police.
But now the Attorney-General has intervened. He will review the sentencing after being inundated with complaints that it was too lenient.
We have the former Chief Superintendent to the Metropolitan Police. This is Parm Sandhu with this one. Parm, this is the big news today. Do you think the sentence for Carrick was too lenient?
The judge has actually done, she's played the law and she's played it to the letter of the law and done what she was supposed to have done. She had to give him certain discounts. He had pled not guilty for about a year and then suddenly he pleaded guilty to all of the offences, which meant that he got a huge reduction on his sentence. So she was bound by, the rules, the regulations. I do think it's quite short for the amount of life sentences that he's got, 36 life sentences, and the number of victims that he's got. But I do believe that in the future, more victims will come forward and maybe that will change. But what we've got to remember is this man is 48 years old. So in 30 years' time, he's going to be almost 80. So even if the case is reviewed and the sentence is reviewed, is it really going to make that much difference?
As a woman who served in the Metropolitan Police that we've heard so much about as this sort of misogynistic institution, were you shocked by some of the details that were heard in court yesterday? I mean, truly harrowing, depraved, disgusting details about what a serving officer did to women.
I think it's a very sad day for policing, not just for the Metropolitan Police, but for the police across the country. And I still have got a huge amount of respect for those good officers who turn up day after day and do the job that they're supposed to. This man thought he was above the law. He used his warrant card, he used his uniform, and he used his position in policing to rape, to abuse, to humiliate all of these women. And that's what, and the good thing is that because it was shown on TV on many channels, it means that it shows that no one is above the law, and there was a clear message there. And my advice to any woman or man who is suffering at this time or is in crisis is pick up the phone. The majority of police officers are good, caring individuals, and they will get the help that they need.
1% of rapes, I was reading, reach conviction. Why is it going so badly wrong with rape conviction?
Isabel, it's absolutely appalling that in this country the rape conviction is around 1.5% and around 40% of victims will withdraw their case. And that is because it takes so long for a case to get to court. It takes between 18 months and 2 years to get to court. In that time, the case will be cancelled, rescheduled, witnesses won't turn up, and then that woman has to relive that experience time and time again. It's bad enough being raped, but then you've got to live through that experience to prove to a jury, to prove to strangers that that actually happened to you. And that's why our rape conviction rates are so low.
OK, so more needs to be done, in your view, to support victims and make them feel that the authorities are on their side.
There needs to be a holistic approach. It's not just about policing. This is about social services. This is about the refuges, the charities that are funded year to year and not for a long-term picture. So they all need to work together. They all need to be funded properly. We need to put money to protect women up and down the country, and that joined up working isn't there at the moment. We actually need to support whistleblowers in work environments who are reporting other colleagues who may be doing this, and also the victims themselves.
And just finally, what about Mark Rowley? Do you think he's got a grip of this? It seems as though the government are persuaded he's the right man. They think that he's on top of things. What about from your perspective as a woman who worked in the Met?
I was disappointed with his comments yesterday where he said, I'm not going to go through an action plan and you'll find out at the end of March. Well, this isn't the first case that we've had. We've had very high-profile police officers, cases involving police officers that have gone wrong. And Mark Rowley is not new to the Met. And so yesterday, I would have liked him to have gone through the action plan to say, I have done this. This week I'm going to do this. And even, once a week, give a press briefing so that he can reassure the community, the public, the women, to say, I am actually doing something, and I'm not hearing that. So I'm disappointed with that. I'm tired of the apologies. I'm tired of the reports. There's another review, another report. I actually want some action now. I don't think it's good enough.
Okay.
Well, Parm Sandhu speaking very strongly there, former chief superintendent with the Metropolitan Police on the sentencing of David Carrick. Thank you very much indeed. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
The time is 8 minutes now past 7. Death toll for that earthquake in Turkey and Syria continues to rise, and it's reached almost...
Yeah, around 8,000 now. A state of emergency has been declared by the Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan in 10 provinces. And although countries worldwide have promised to send aid, it is feared that the death toll could reach as high as 20,000.
Well, earlier on, we spoke to Atkur Rahman from the Global Relief Trust, who's been involved in the rescue mission.
The first moment I arrived in Antakya, I came across a woman who was screaming for help, and she was telling me that somebody is in the building. It was actually her husband. And when I managed to get in, I found a man whose foot I could see. I was checked for blood circulation. I managed to squeeze through a bit more, and I realized that this gentleman had passed away due to being crushed. There was another old elderly gentleman, and it broke my heart because he was probably in his 70s, probably close to the end of his life in terms of age. And he was in bed with his wife, and he doesn't know that his wife is next to him dead.
We've now got a professor of structural geology. That's Bob Holsworth, we'll say hello to, from Durham University on this one. Bob, good morning to you. Just trying to describe the scale of the devastation as well. I mean, I was amazed to hear it's very difficult for the rescue services to get involved here because apparently the area is the size of a country like Bulgaria to deal with.
Yeah, it's a huge and devastating earthquake. I mean, the pictures you've been showing this morning that we've seen in the last few days are truly, truly terrible. I mean, the reasons that this is such a devastating earthquake are many, and it's a whole coincidence of things. First and foremost, you have the fact that the earthquakes that occurred in the area here, magnitude 7.8 and 7.5, each released about as much energy as the largest ever atomic bomb. That's about 50 megatons each.
Unbelievable.
Second, these earthquakes occurred quite shallow in the crust, about 10, 18 kilometers. That means that you're much closer to the epicenter. So the amount of shaking that occurs, the amount of devastation that occurs is much, much worse than if the earthquake is deeper. Thirdly, you've got the fact that this is a very densely populated area. So if it's hit by an event of this size, it's almost inevitable you're going to get huge loss of life. Fourth, and perhaps this is the other really important one, is the timing of the magnitude 7.8 event. It occurred in the middle of the night when people were at home asleep in their beds. It's an old adage in earthquakes that it's not earthquakes that kill people, it's collapsing buildings. And these poor people had no opportunity to get out of their buildings. Finally, and this one applies to northern Syria, it's the recent conflicts there have very much degraded the buildings. But first and foremost, it's just the sheer size of this event.
It takes me back to sort of geography A level and thinking about tectonic plates and all of that kind of thing. I mean, just explain to us why this region is prone to these kinds of movements and, are the plates on the move? Can we expect more of this? What do the boffins, what do the professors see in the future?
Well, the plates are always on the move. What you have here is the coming together of three tectonic plates, Arabia, Africa, and Anatolia. And the boundaries of those plates in this area are vertical fault lines that cut right through the crust that show mainly horizontal displacements, like the San Andreas Fault in Western North America. And in this particular case, Arabia is moving slowly northwards and is squeezing a wedge-shaped fragment of crust, which corresponds to Western Anatolia, which is Western Turkey, squeezing it out westwards. A bit like if you take a pip, an orange pip, and put it between your finger and thumb and squeeze it, it pops out to the side. Well, Anatolia is being driven out to the side. And that this squeezing triggered displacement along a big fault line called the Eastern Anatolian Fault, which itself, that produced the 7.8 event. And then that triggered another earthquake along an east-west trending fault called the Surgu Fault, which produced another displacement. Total amounts of displacement, you're talking a few meters to the west in each case.
Is there anything that can be done when we look ahead to whatever rebuilding process there has to be? So many people affected, so many buildings affected by this. Can they do better with their architecture?
Well, I mean, Turkey is not unused to seismic events and catastrophic seismic events. There have been, in the last 50 years, 4 really terrible earthquakes in 1975, in 1983, 1999 and 2020, each of which have killed thousands or tens of thousands of people. But you have to understand that this event was really, I mean, it's more than 3 times the size of any event that struck the region in modern times. So yes, things were done. After the 1999 Izmit earthquake, for example, the Turkish government pledged to spend significant amounts of money on improving the earthquake resistance of buildings. But you have to understand this event, I mean, the sort of typical earthquakes in this area are a magnitude 5 or something like that. This event was 16,000 times bigger than that. And there's only so much that you can do in terms of building design when faced with an event of that magnitude, you know, particularly in a densely populated area of this kind.
All very sad, very, very sad. Bob, thanks for your perspective on things. Bob Holdsworth is a professor of structural geology at Durham University. Thanks for your time.
I did love geography A-level. I remember going as well as a reporter into Bristol University and seeing the department where they reenact earthquakes and volcanoes. I mean, just from a science point of view, I love it. Find it really interesting. And, you know, what they do is so useful and helpful in predicting future. You know, all his advice, well worth heeding, I would say. Anyway, we are, what's the time now? 7:15. Yeah, let's bring you up to date with the headlines this hour.
OK, a man who was found dead with his wife and daughter at Epsom College had been in contact with police about his gun licence only days before the killings. George Pattison, his wife Emma, who was head teacher at the school, and their 7-year-old child were discovered at their home in the school grounds. Surrey police confirmed yesterday that a homicide investigation has been launched.
Last-minute talks are being held today between firefighters and their bosses as the fire brigades unions try to strike a new pay deal for workers in the force. If the talks fail, strike dates are expected to be announced as soon as tomorrow. They voted overwhelmingly to reject a 5% pay offer at the end of last year.
The Church of England could move away from the 1,000-year-old tradition. It's not a tradition. The 1,000-year-old fact of referring to God as He in future. That's just a tradition. I think they'll call him a He.
Yeah, they have done, yeah.
After certain priests asked to use gender-neutral terms instead. What do you think about this one, viewers and listeners? Let us know. Religious leaders say a new project on gendered language will begin this spring, with any changes to be approved by the Church's decision-making body, the Synod.
Scan of the emails, because I saw a little while ago loads of emails coming in. God impregnated Mary, he's a man. Do one, wokes. There's many, many more. Good morning, Eamonn and Isabel. I'm not a particularly religious person. Bear with me. This is always a risk, reading them live when I haven't vetted them. I'm not a particularly religious person, but the C of E messing with centuries of not just traditions, but of people's Christian faith. And the belief of what is the foundation of Christian human origins is wrong and too far. I'm yet to see anyone in favour, put it that way.
No, I just laugh at that term. It was a tradition. We could have called him anything, but we just have this tradition of referring to God as a man, despite what the Bible says or anything else. But of course, a lot of you, this won't matter. You couldn't care less what God's called because you probably don't believe in a God.
But I do think this affects even people who don't believe in God. I think there are lots of people in this country who aren't practicing Christians, but have grown up in a Christian society, a school where they've learnt the Lord's Prayer, and will still be affronted by this because they will see it as, OK, it might be a fact, as you say, but they also would see it as a bit of a British tradition. So, look, let us know. Is this a step too far? Are the church out of touch? Are they going too far the other way?
I just think of all the things the Church of England have got to deal with, is this really high up the agenda, or should this be?
I'd like to hear someone who thinks it's a good idea, because at the moment we're only hearing both of us are agreed this is a silly idea, and pretty much all of the viewers. Anyone out there, let us know. We'd love to hear from you.
I would have Dan Fawlty doing a survey on it. Dan joins us now.
Do a people's poll.
He's our head of
They're gonna know the
digital
answer.
news here at GB News. Very good to see you, Dan. I just have to take my word for it that he's there. We're now going to talk about Rishi Sunak, who's held the first meeting of his new cabinet after an overhaul of Whitehall, which saw major changes across multiple departments.
Well, look, let's bring in Dan Fawlty, because essentially it's barely mentioned across the papers this morning. I think you could pretty much say it was a pretty uneventful Rishi shuffle yesterday. A bit dull, but perhaps that was the plan.
That was the plan. Number 10 were definitely playing this down. They were referring to it as a mini shuffle. They didn't want this to be seen as some grand overhaul. They would argue that it was changing the cogs to just make things work better so that they could then focus on the people's priorities. So they'll be quite happy that, quite frankly, this doesn't seem to have gained much attention. And let's not forget, this all started from the fact that they had to replace their party chairman because he had to be sacked over his tax affairs. So that not being on the front pages, that was the reason this all started, they'll be very happy with that.
I did ask Greg Hurwitz if his tax affairs were all in order, and he assured me that they were, but still cagey about when the Prime Minister will publish his. We didn't want to be drawn on that. Look, what wasn't expected, I suppose, yesterday was this shake-up of some of the Whitehall departments. Is this a good use of resources or a bit of a distraction for the government when they've got strikes, they've got NHS problems, as you mentioned, the Dominic Raab headache?
Yeah, I think Rishi Sunak says that this is in order to focus on those priorities, and he says that this will mean that they can then do what people need. And by creating a energy department that they haven't had for a long time, a dedicated energy department, he says that this will make a real difference when it comes to tackling energy bills, for example. And we might put a poll out on this and see what our viewers think on this too, because it is the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero. I imagine there are a number of people across the country will be thinking, hold on, why are we so focused on net zero that we're even naming a department after it when, quite frankly, I just want help with my energy bills coming down?
Well, Rishi Sunak barely turned up or even acknowledged that COP27 was happening. So interesting that he's now into net zero. Look, let's have a little listen, shall we, to what our brand new Conservative Party chairman was saying about the role. We were having a bit of fun with his name, weren't we, Eamonn?
Yeah. Safe pair of hands.
Safe pair of hands, etc. Let's see what he had to say.
It's not a secret to say that this year's local elections will be a difficult set of local elections for the party. But the important thing is that we do as well as we can and set the platform for a general election next year. Obviously, local elections this year will also be fought on local issues. There's an interesting set of the country that's up for local elections. There's a few directly elected mayors as well. So there'll definitely be an interesting contest this year. But our main focus is going to be on making sure we've got everything in place to win next year's general election, to take on an unreformed Labour Party that lurks behind Sir Keir Starmer. I think 160 Labour MPs out on picket lines last week. It's this sort of thing that we need to bring to the British people, that the Labour Party behind Sir Keir Starmer is an unreformed a party that is still very much characterised by the people that Jeremy Corbyn put in place.
So there we go. That's what he had to say about it all. I suppose the big question is, what do our viewers think about this mini reshuffle? Will it, shift their place in the polls 20 points behind Labour at the moment? What do GB News viewers and listeners think?
Yeah, so Greg Hurwitz was talking there about that expectation management, that this year is going to be tough for the locals, but we're building the groundwork for next year's general election. But last night we put out a poll asking our viewers on social media, does Rishi Sunak's new look cabinet improve the chances of the Conservatives? And 79% of our viewers said absolutely not, no. So I think there's a lot of work that he's got to do. He was very chipper and upbeat in that interview about the job, but he's got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, he was definitely talking it up, wasn't he?
Thank you very much indeed. We'll leave it there. We'll take a break. Sport after that. Paul Coyte to take you through the back pages, including Wrexham's heartbreaking loss last night, ending their FA Cup.
And all of our Hollywood dreams. He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back. Eamonn Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamonn. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamonn Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, still to come on our little show today.
We're talking about cycling in around 15 minutes' time. It's after I had a bit of a horror story at the weekend. I'm going to be reliving that for you this morning, but we'll be giving you top tips on how to cycle safely, especially if you've got children. It's something a lot of us do as families of a weekend. How can you do that without too many risks? 7:45.
I know. I love the idea of cycling, but can you do it? Is it always going to be a risk?
Yeah.
And from jumping out of airplanes to swimming with sharks just before 9 o'clock, you're going to meet a real-life action man. and best-selling author. So what he does is he writes all these adventure books, but he doesn't write them unless he actually knows what the stunts.
I've come up with a term for it.
Which
it's
is?
method writing. So you've heard like method acting.
Yeah.
So he wrote about somebody passing out, and he thought, well, I've got to experience passing out before I can write it.
Well,
so he
whatever floats your boat, Greg. Anyway, we're going to.
He's going to be in the studio, and it's exciting. Talk to him a little bit
coming in the studio.
Yes.
I thought he was in America.
Oh, I thought he was coming in the studio.
Is he?
I've got that
Where
wrong.
is he?
Yes,
He's
in
in
the
the studio.
studio. New
Well
York
done.
Times best-selling author, right here.
Brilliant. You can join in any of the discussions. You can talk about your method acting or writing or whatever. GB Views at GB News. You can tweet as well on the Twitter sphere at GB News. Right, so we look at the back pages now, and big headline back page of the Mail. They're reporting that a Qatari business group are interested in buying Manchester United. £6 billion are on the table for that one. That is the report, and they're going to submit it in the next few days. The Express says that Man City are concerned that the Premier League's case against them and their financial activity is much stronger than they thought. And The Guardian looks at last night's FA Cup action. Sheffield United ended non-league Wrexham's Hollywood run in an exciting 3-1 victory at Bramall Lane. I'm sure it wasn't too exciting for Wrexham, but anyway, that's the way it was. And there was a bit of controversy at the end of all that one, Paul Coyte.
There was a bit of trouble. There was a bit of argy-bargy. And it was, I still think it was exciting for Wrexham because Sheffield United went 1-0 up, and they're 90 places above Wrexham, for crying out loud. I mean, you've got Sheffield United are doing really well in the Championship. Wrexham, lowly Wrexham, of course. But I think, to be honest with you, I think people are a little jealous because of the attention they're getting, because of Ryan Reynolds and because of the Hollywood stuff. So it then went to 1-1, and then Wrexham got a penalty, missed the second penalty, and then after 90 minutes, then Sheffield United won it. But Billy Sharp, who's the striker at Sheffield United, accused Wrexham of disrespecting them and the way and it accused them of just misbehaving, and he didn't like it. So what he did, and I'm not a fan of this. So what he did afterwards was going up to the Wrexham fans and the players, doing all this stuff, and it's like, for crying, do you really need to do that? Do you really need to do that? When you're playing a team that is so far below you, and no matter what Wrexham are doing, they're going to try everything to try and win.
And it was a fairy tale.
It is a fairy tale. It got people like me interested, you know? Because I just thought, wow, he's flying in from the States for this. This is big stuff.
Yes, but he
does own it. Be a long journey home for him, won't it?
Yes, exactly. And he's probably thinking, well, I've made a few quid out of this game away at Sheffield United. But the fairy tale is over. So poor old Wrexham, and and now the lowest ranked side of Grimsby Town, because Grimsby thrashed Luton 3-0, who are 60 places above them. So Grimsby will now go on and play Southampton in the 6th round. And Southampton, who are doing really badly at the moment, who knows that Grimsby could actually turn them over. So don't be surprised if there's an upset on the cards there.
So, look, what is happening with Man City? Are they in bigger trouble than they thought?
Well, it seems that they're in big trouble. And if you speak to any Manchester City fan, and it could be a sweeping statement, but I don't think it is, because any Man City fan is going to go, well, it's not. How could it be? It's, everybody hates us, and the only reason is because we're so successful and because we're so rich, everybody wants to take everything away from us. But the Premier League have said that there are extreme amount of discrepancies with the way that they've been dealing with FFP and how we've spoken about it over the past few days.
Leeds go to Manchester United tonight, still managerless, or with a permanent manager lacking there. And meanwhile, there's another headline that there is a proposed Qatari bid, £6 billion for Man United.
Yeah, it's always going to come in because the fact that they're going to be for sale. And I don't know how Manchester United fans will feel about being owned by a Qatari conglomerate. Obviously, there's the one side of it where it's going to be unlimited money. But then, of course, we've got the whole debate about Qatar, human rights, etc., etc. We've seen it with the owners of Newcastle. So we'll see. I mean, Jim Radcliffe is still around as well. You don't think it's going to happen with Jim? You don't think Jim's the man?
I think compared to wealth, like you're talking about, straight away from Qatar, I think the Jim Radcliffe thing wouldn't.
But does money talk? Is that it? Is his money the
in
bottom
football,
line?
Of course it does.
Of course
Yeah,
it
because
does.
then you can buy in the best players.
And all this sports washing, I mean, the World Cup proved all these people went, oh, this is awful, terrible, human rights, whatever it is. They don't care once the football gets underway. So.
I think you made a point, because if we look at boxing, there was boxing in Saudi Arabia. The first fight that was in Saudi Arabia, you've got Tyson Fury out there. Oh, this shouldn't be happening. And now it's like the norm that it goes out to Saudi Arabia and everybody ignores it. The same thing with tennis as well. So it is, and people just want success. Fans will just think, yeah, I know it's bad and we don't want to do the deal, but we want our team to be successful.
No one talks about, I've mentioned it a few times, but no one talks about the fact, Harrods, for example, is owned by the Qataris, but it's sort of like destination number one when tourists come into the UK. There's loads of Qatari.
Where's the boycotts outside there?
Yeah.
So it's, it is.
It's all selective.
Of course it is.
So Leeds thought they might have got the West Brom manager, Carlos Corberán.
Yep.
But no, West Brom come in and say, look, here's a big, long contract for you.
Yeah, and I think it's a difficult thing for him to decide, because he's gone in at West Bromwich Albion and he's doing very well, and it's his first major manager job, and that's working out okay, and he's turned them around. But then when a Premier League club comes in, is it a situation? I mean, we saw it with Michael Beale, who was the Queen's Park Rangers manager, and with Wolves, and decided, you know what, I'm going to stay. He ended up going up to Rangers, but. What do you do? Do you think, well, maybe this will only happen once in a lifetime, I go to the Premier League, or do I stick with it and make a bigger success of what I'm doing, and then maybe the bigger job's going to come? So, anyway, he's going to stay at West Bromwich Albion. Indoni Iraola from Rayo Valença is likely to come in.
Let's finish with a bit of basketball, because they always score late. It's always the last touch of the ball. LeBron James.
LeBron James, now the greatest basketball player ever.
Why?
Well, he's broken the points record, all-time points record for scoring. And those that are there, he is. There's LeBron James, and the guy with him. That is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who was the one that had the record before. So there he is. That's him. He's on the right-hand side. 38,387 points, which was set back in 1984 for his career. And now that's been broken by LeBron James. See, the amazing thing, they're playing in the middle of the game. So they have 3 quarters. At the end, in the third quarter, he breaks the record. So you would imagine they'd finish the game and then do the celebration. They stop everything. So then all the fireworks are going off. The guy does the interview on the court. They bring out Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. They do all the celebration. They go, right, OK, we've got a game to finish now. And then they go off and finish the game after that.
Is this LeBron James who loves North Korea?
LeBron James, I don't think he loves North Korea. No. You're thinking of Dennis Rodman.
Oh, right,
Dennis
okay.
Rodman, a
This is
Chicago
why I'm not
Bull
good in the
from
sport.
a few years
Okay,
before.
got it.
I don't think he loves
Back in
North
my
Korea.
box.
Don't you worry. But Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, for most of us, most famous for being one of the pilots in Airplane. Do you remember that?
Now, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's the guy.
I'm back in the ring.
That's the guy.
Thanks, Paul.
Pleasure.
Appreciate it. Thank you. We'll take a break there. After that, what do we do?
Well, we're going to go through the papers. Chris Akabusi and Emma Wolf for that. See you in a sec.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions. I have no time for cultural totalitarianism. We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness, and then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You can hear the laugh before you can see him. Chris Akabusi's back, as is Emma Wolf. It is that time in the show where we go
we
through
should say, Emma, of course, that this is the front page of the Star today, and there is a survey which says that 42% of people cannot remember the last time they laughed. How sad is that?
It's really sad. Most people are not having 3 good belly laughs a week, and when you have a belly laugh, it feels wonderful.
It's medicinal.
It's medicinal. It really is, though. Laughter actually lowers cortisol, which is what's flooding our bodies when we're stressed.
Well, you see,
it's actually really important that we have a proper laugh.
Last time I gave up breakfast television, the doctor said to me, "This is very good because your body is flooded. You're addicted to cortisol. You get up in the morning, first thing, and your body's hit with this adrenaline cortisol, and then it goes down. And that's what's wrong with us. Apparently, this is bad for blood pressure, bad for
exactly.
bad for your pancreas, bad for absolutely everything.
It's actually damaging our bodies.
That's true. Yeah, well, that's the antidote. Chris Akabusi.
Well, I was laughing in my head at the idea that you only laugh 3 times a week. 3 times a day, at least.
3 times an hour.
A minute with you.
Exactly.
But it is a serious point. I mean,
well, actually, there's a lot in that because, I mean, I learned to laugh as a young kid. I mean, because of some of the disadvantages I had. And it was like happy, sad, glad, bad. If you laugh, the world laughs with you, and when they laugh with you, you feel good about yourself. So it doesn't matter about your condition. When you're laughing, all of a sudden, you feel good about yourself.
It is infectious.
But I like the idea, Emma, that when you laugh, then there is something in your body which says, yeah, let's get all the good endorphins out and all the good things.
If I start laughing now, will everyone catch it? If I do a fake laugh, can I set you
But
off?
I don't, yeah.
I love it when, you know, when something happens and then someone laughs and you laugh at them laughing, and then all of a sudden everyone's giggling.
It needs to be genuine. It needs to be genuine because there are laughter workshops, all that kind of thing, where you start the fake laugh and it's meant to be. I don't buy that. It's got to be proper. You're giggling with your sister, or you're lying on the floor with your little one, or whatever. You're really laughing, and you feel great afterwards.
I went through a phase in this job a while back when I would get the giggles at inappropriate times, and it would be to the point where, well, just as a news anchor over my career, I have had times when it's been so inappropriate and I've been overcome.
But I don't think that's good laughter because, but then you're fighting with the stress.
The more I've suppressed the laughter, the more I've been like, I'm going to burst.
Yeah.
And you've had to read links for me when I'm, you know...
That's like laughing in church.
Yes.
Exactly the same
That's
thing.
a stressful situation. I don't think that's the right laughter. You want to laugh and let go.
I've been in board meetings before, and something's happened, and the chairman he doesn't recognise, and you start laughing.
It's the worst feeling, trying to suppress a giggle when your body wants to laugh. Oh.
Do you know, here is a story today which just filled me with joy and happiness. Front page of The Sun. Fawlty Towers, yes, with John Cleese.
Eamonn, does this give you...
Uh-oh, here he goes.
Do you remember that?
Come on, break out into a 100-metre dash.
And then you go, you do all that. Do you remember that? Finish. Sauce.
Only I could get my leg up that high. So that is the goose step there. And the story, the plot was at Fawlty Towers that Sybil was in hospital. So Basil is left to cope when some German guests arrive. The mayhem leads to the infamous goose step and don't mention the war scenes. Now, listen, if you don't know what Fawlty Towers is, if you've never watched it, I just feel sorry for you. I really do.
Yeah.
But the story is that at the age of 83, John Cleese, who's joining this channel...
is
also... in talks to bring back Fawlty Towers.
So I'm wondering whether his daughter will be doing the goose stopping. Do you remember also the one, it's also in the inserts, where he decides to batter 7 different colours of something out of his car. And I'm going to give you a great big thrashing. He's got this great big branch. And we were all in bits, because, of course, then, all week, all month, what you're doing, you're going to give your car a great big
we're endorsing
thrashing.
violence.
Do you know what I mean? Do you remember? It was madness, wasn't it? It was just absolutely madness, that show.
Well, it was originally recorded in the 70s, and then it's just been repeated ever since.
Yeah.
There were very few episodes. I forget how many episodes there were, but there's something, 9
And it wasn't an expensive set or... anything really. It was very simple but so funny.
There was one. I remember there was one show where it was like interviewing for a job, and everyone kept on coming in and going out and saying the same sort of thing. It was just absolutely hilarious. I mean, I can't remember too much of it, but there's some great big iconic moments which you just, everyone in the playground, because I was still at school, everyone in the playground was just goose stepping like I was doing. Don't mention the war. Don't mention the war.
The relationship he had with his wife Sybil. Little did I know that I would go on to marry Sybil or a woman like. Yes, Basil. Yes. So the whole chemistry with everybody involved in it was.
Yeah, and it all seems really innocent when you look back, doesn't it? When you see episodes now, you think it's such an innocent time, really.
Yeah.
Even though there were edgy jokes and things, it's really kind of a different era.
Like when you was just reading, like that upstaging where there were so many upstaging moments where something's happening downstage, and then in the background, Basil Fawlty is doing something absolutely ludicrous. Yeah. You're pulling your attention.
So apparently he will, this modern version, he will be running a boutique hotel with his daughter, Camilla.
Yeah, fabulous. Should be fun.
Should we try and keep the positive theme going? Because there's a story, Chris, you've chosen in the Mirror, which is a new prostate test, which has a really high accuracy rate.
Absolutely, yeah. And currently, the way men are found to have prostate cancer is through a PSA test.
What's a PSA test?
A PSA test is also
blood test.
It's a blood test. But the challenge with that is it's not very accurate. So, I say not very accurate. Yeah, there are many people who get the PSA test is too high, but actually it's got nothing to do with cancer. And, I've had this... I was diagnosed with that... actually, it's a year ago. I'm fine.
With what, prostate?
Prostate cancer, yeah.
Right, and you're good.
Yeah, great, happy. There's something called brachytherapy, which is when you put these seeds into your prostate. It shrinks your prostate, safe as houses, and I'm good to go.
Good man.
And I found it because there was blood in my semen. And that's how you find it. It can blood in your semen or can blood in your urine. But many, many men don't find it until it's too late. And this 94% test... What are you laughing at? You started to laugh again. We were talking about laughing earlier. We've had you've had 3 goes already.
It's educational. It's
blood in your semen.
He said he had blood in his urine or something.
Yeah. Well, you didn't have to go into this.
No, is that too naughty, is it?
No.
OK.
No, I think it's really, Chris, I think it's really, really important that you say that. So many men get prostate. My father died with prostate
prostate cancer in his 90s. And for years, we lived with this monthly thing of the PSA. Has it gone up? Has it gone down? It's so important that you're talking about it. And you're young and you're fit and you're saying, yep, you were diagnosed with it a year ago. They've treated it. You know,
if you're a black guy, 1 in 3 of us are going to get it. And if you're a Caucasian like yourself, 1 in 6 of us are going to get it. As you said, many of us die with it as opposed to of it. And it's such a treatable cancer.
Yeah.
It's the most common cancer among men. It's so treatable.
So many people do die from it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, so, and also, ladies, you've got to roll, because if you're intimate with somebody and you notice something...
We don't have to, you know, get in...
No, you just hey, mate...
I'll just do some nagging. That's what we have to leave
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Do some nagging. Yeah. OK.
I said we keep it positive. I mean, some people will see this as a positive story because it's a chance to bash the oil giants. BP's profits announced yesterday. Oh, I keep choosing Chris's stories.
That's OK. Well, we could go to a sad one. The depression one.
OK, well, let's do that, because we talked a bit about the oil profits yesterday and the outrage. Go on, then. You want to talk about Martin Lewis?
Well, yeah, I mean, Martin Lewis does amazing work, doesn't he, campaigning for sort of, you know, lower energy, poorer customers and things like that. And he's now talking about travellers, so not the travelling community, people in general. If you disclose that you have depression or any kind of mental health condition...
Disclose to who?
To travel firms.
Oh, right.
People are actually being charged up to 3 times as much for travel insurance if they have depression, and up to 11 times as much if they have bipolar disorder.
Oh, right.
And I think in this climate where we're saying we've got to be open about mental health, we've got to, you know, treat it as though it's just a natural part of life, to then be discriminating against people if they say, you know, I take medication or I'm managing my condition well, but I do have depression, people are being charged a lot more to travel abroad.
Yeah, it's obscene. And it really upsets me with the insurance companies that they do anything not to pay out and actually to make money. And look, you are, like you said, you're trying to encourage people to be upfront and open, and then when that disclosure can actually hammer you, when actually they are managing their condition.
Yep, they can be on medication. They haven't even had any episodes for up to 5 years. These people are still being charged double. And so I think all it does is it drives it underground and people will just not disclose
I think you're all
that kind of thing.
right, but in fairness, the insurance companies, I'm no fan of them, but they're there to manage their risks, though, aren't they?
Yeah, okay.
So
they are there to manage the risks, but I mean, I'm not very happy with insurance companies, because if you play by the game, they do everything possible not to pay out. And you ask yourself, why am I paying for all of these insurances if actually your job is not to pay out in the end?
OK. That's the end of you guys for another 40 minutes or so. We'll say goodbye to them and welcome them back at 25 to 9.
It's coming up to 10 to 8, though. Let's bring you up to date now with today's top stories.
The Foreign Secretary says 3 British nationals are missing after those earthquakes in Turkey and Syria. They've left almost 8,000 people dead. James Cleverly says at least 35 British citizens have been caught up in this. The 7.8 magnitude quake hit on Monday, a second a few hours later. The government has pledged to support Turkey's president, who's declared a state of emergency for 3 months in the 10 worst affected cities.
The Prime Minister has revealed his new cabinet, as well as creating 4 new departments. Greg Hurwitz has taken over as Conservative Party chairman after Nadhim Zahawi was sacked. Kemi Badenoch is Business and Trade Secretary, and the Culture Secretary is now Lucy Fraser, replacing Michelle Donlan, who's a new Science and Technology Secretary. A new Energy Security and Net Zero department will focus on securing the UK's long-term energy supply, which is headed up by Grant Shapps.
The image of King Charles that's due to feature on first and second class stamps from April has been revealed. Royal Mail's director has described it as a defining part of his reign. The simple design draws inspiration from stamps that featured the late Queen Elizabeth.
Now we're going to talk about cycling safety, because at the weekend I had a bit of a shocker, which I've talked about on social media, and it sort of snowballed a little bit and there's been lots of interest in it. I was out on a bicycle ride with my husband and my youngest, who's just turned 5 last month, and she lost control of her bike just at the exact point where the cycle lane, which we were on, was intersected by a road, and the exact point that she careered into the road, screaming, a white van was accelerating towards the junction and hadn't seen her. So, I mean, it was sort of time stood still. I was pretty sure I was about to witness the worst imaginable thing. And I was also convinced that the driver was about to see her. And then I started to think, well, it's not happening. It was just a horrible, horrible few moments. I'm very pleased to say my very quick-thinking husband, who was behind us, I don't know how, to this day I don't know how, he was on a bike as well, threw his bike to one side, managed to jump across in front of the van, which obviously drew attention to the situation, because Poppy was low level, so the van may not have seen her, and managed to push Poppy out of the way and missed her by about this much. So as you can imagine, an upsetting experience, and it's taken me a little while to calm down after all of that, but it's really made us think, should we be talking more about cycling safety? And we do have a guest to talk about that this morning, Emily Cherry. She's Chief Executive of Bikeability Trust. And I suppose the temptation, good morning to you, after something like this, is not to take your kid out again, because you're putting them in harm's way. But we are avid, keen cyclists. We love to go out as a family. We will go out again. But are there ways to make sure that we can do that safely?
Yeah, there absolutely are. So, firstly, thank you for sharing your experience, and I hope you and okay. We have to admit, your husband is a hero. So, absolutely,
I really think he was. I actually think the story would have been very different if he hadn't have done what he's an experienced cyclist. He lived in Amsterdam for a while. I don't honestly know how he did it, and I pay tribute to him if he's watching. Thank you so much, because he saved the day.
But I think that's one of the keys that you've then said there, is because he's an experienced cyclist and he is used to the rules of the road. And actually, there are lots of positives about what you did as parents, because you were cycling behind Poppy, so that's one of our top tips. So if you're cycling with young children on the road, go behind, shepherd them so that you can respond and identify hazards that are coming up around them. So there was lots of good things that you did, and we want more children and parents to get out there cycling. We've got 4 really key top tips that I really hope all of your listeners are able to. So, and we will be there for training. We do children and families training, we do adults, we do all sorts of training, and we'll train everyone to cycle safely. So the 4 tips are observation. So am I aware of everything that's going on around me? All of the hazards are front and back. The second one is positioning. This is really important, where you put yourself on the road. So not cycling in the gutter if you're sharing the road space, but in the middle of the lane when it's safe to do so, or about 60 centimetres out, because that forces traffic to stop, forces traffic to come around you, and leave critically the 1.5 metres for a car to overtake.
So if you're a parent, when we're on the roads with little ones, and we try to avoid the roads as much as possible, but I'll always be just a little bit out past my little ones to actually almost be protective, so that if a car does go too close, they're too close to me and there's that extra cushion
and that's absolutely perfect.
You see, I think, Emily, it is difficult enough being on an open road, or, when you came to an open road, to worry about keeping yourself on a bike, to worry about the surface that you're on as well. There's so many things that you cannot control, what the weather's like, the traffic that we're talking about around you as well. So being with children, looking after yourself, and having to worry about physically looking after some kids around you is a big ask.
It is, and that's why those top tips are really important. So, you talk about road services, potholes. There's a lot of those around at the moment.
Or bicycle lanes being intersected with roads. There's no way around that. You obviously have to have roads, but that was problematic for us because, obviously we had to keep stopping and starting, and she wasn't able to stop on that occasion.
And that's where our other 2 top tips are really important as well. So in terms of priorities, so knowing who has priority on which part of the road as well, and on communication. So, what you did was communicate with those other road users. Let's also not forget there's been some significant changes to the highway code that are about protecting cyclists, walkers and all pedestrians. So the highway code now has a hierarchy of road users, meaning that the people with the most potential to harm have the greatest responsibility to protect. So here in this case, it was the van driver. And that's really important, that we have all got to behave responsibly, share the road space, and just really make sure that everyone can enjoy walking and cycling.
It's funny, my dad texted me afterwards and said, did you get the van driver's registration number? He was accelerating towards the junction and he wasn't aware of what was going on around him. And I was just so grateful he hadn't run her over. I could have hugged him. And he wound his window down and I put my hand on top of him and, I was just so grateful. But, he would have been in trouble with the law in that situation, wouldn't he? Because, he shouldn't be accelerating he was coming out of a council estate towards a junction and we were at fault because she'd lost control of her bike, but, you know, she was little.
She is, and that's why we are training every child, as well as offering parents training as well in cycle training, but we're also doing driver training as well, so that is really critical. You know, we share the road space. I'm a car driver and a cyclist. I need to know the rules of the road and I need to behave responsibly on the road.
Well, I mean, I love the idea of cycling, and I love the idea of thought of different devices. I've even thought of getting a tricycle. An electric bike,
Electric
you know,
bike, yeah, we've had
which
one of
I
those.
have, and but honestly, Emily, I'm too nervous about it now on the roads. I mean, Isabel was on a parkland area, which then became a road, but that's fine. Then getting your bike to a parkland area, depending where you live and whatever, I just, at the end of the day, I don't do it. I look at country roads in particular, and I just think too dangerous, just too dangerous. I wouldn't trust other drivers or sharing the space with vehicles.
So it's why we've got to do, quite frankly, we've got to do more. You know, government needs to really do more around the changes to the highway code and making sure that drivers and cyclists, pedestrians, everyone really knows the rules of the road and behaves much more considerately to each other. But I have to say, anyone who comes through our training, we know from the evidence base and research that you are more confident to cycle on the roads, you're better able to perceive and avoid hazards and dangers, and you're more likely to cycle. So I would say to you, Eamonn, and we'd be delighted to obviously offer you any cycle training, including on e-cycles, you know, come out, do some bikeability, do some cycle training, and that will really improve your confidence.
So bikeability would do what for someone like me? Increase confidence, increase your knowledge?
Yes, yeah, so we'd run through all of our top tips. We'd take you out on a particular route that you may want to ride so that you can practice it and give you that confidence to cycle everywhere.
I have to say, it is great fun cycling. It is great fun,
yeah.
feeling the wind in your hair. Thank you so much, Emily Cherry, for all those tips, and noted.
What you need is some sort of big lead on your children that you can pull them back like doggies or something.
Yeah, I know. It's definitely made me a bit wobbly. We've got to take a break. After that, we're going to be talking a bit more about the police sentencing yesterday. Police protection campaigner will be joining us after this.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store? You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank. My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Metropolitan Police Officer David Carrick's 30-year sentence is to be reviewed for being too lenient.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock, it's Wednesday the 8th of February. You're watching and listening to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Thanks for your company. Leading the news this morning, the judge said he took monstrous advantage of women and acted as though he was untouchable. Now disgraced police officer David Carrick's 30-year sentence will be reviewed by the Attorney General.
3 British nationals are still missing and the death tolls continuing to increase following the earthquake in Turkey and Syria. Children and families have been pulled from the rubble overnight as the rescue mission for survivors continues.
A shake-up of Rishi Sunak's cabinet as the Prime Minister merges UK trade and business and creates departments for energy, security and net zero. The new Conservative chairman, Greg Hurwitz, told us he thinks his deputy, Lee Anderson, and the team will work well together.
I think Lee is a fantastic asset for the Conservative Party. Of course, we've got other deputy chairmen, we've got vice chairman as well, so it's not just me and him. We've got a great team at Conservative headquarters. We've got a really fantastic team of staff, all dedicated to making sure that Rishi Sunak wins next year's general election.
And swimming with sharks, jumping out of planes, hanging out with Navy SEALs and infiltrating cults, we'll be meeting the Method author and real-life action man, Greg Hurwitz.
Get in touch the usual way, and you've been doing that throughout the programme this morning. GBVs at gbnews.uk, and let us know where you're watching or listening from. Story this morning is former police officer David Carrick jailed for at least 30 years yesterday after being handed 36 life sentences for rape and numerous sexual attacks.
The disgraced Metropolitan Police officer carried out a catalogue of violent and brutal sexual offences against 12 women over 20 years whilst he was serving on the force. Home Secretary Suella Braverman has called him a scar on our police.
But now the Attorney General has intervened and will review the sentencing after being inundated with complaints that it was far too lenient.
Well, earlier we spoke to the former Chief Superintendent of the Metropolitan Police, Parm Sandhu, who said the public needs more action than apologies from the current Met Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley.
I was disappointed with his comments yesterday where he said, I'm not going to go through an action plan and you'll find out at the end of March. Well, this isn't the first case that we've had. We've had very high profile police officers, cases involving police officers that have gone wrong. And Mark Rowley is not new to the Met. And so yesterday, I would have liked him to have gone through the action plan to say, I have done this. This week I'm going to do this. And even, once a week, give a press briefing so that he can reassure the community, the public, the women, to say, I am actually doing something, and I'm not hearing that. So I'm disappointed with that. I'm tired of the apologies. I'm tired of the reports. There's another review, another report. I actually want some action now. I don't think it's good enough.
Let's go to retired police officer and director of the Law and Order Foundation, Norman Brennan. Norman, do you think it's good enough?
What, the sentence or?
The sentence.
Well, he pleaded guilty at the last knockings. Most murderers And most offenders, when they go to court and plead guilty, a third of their sentence is normally reduced straight away. So 31 years will see David Carrick probably die in prison. He will be 80. Very few prisoners last to the age of 80. I don't think there would be an appropriate sentence, bar that he would never be allowed to walk the streets of London or Britain again. I mean, he has caused catastrophic damage, along with Wayne Couzens, to the British Police Service. Tens of thousands of great police officers, dedicated, hard-working, brave men and women get up every day to stand between good and bad, right and wrong. And these have just driven carriages through the reputation of the British Police Service, and it's those that are left to get up every day and walk the streets of Britain that have got to pick up the awful flack that these two individuals and others have left in their wake.
Yeah, and I suppose it's the fact that the Metropolitan Police and other police services are painted in a bad light because of this, that there's been such an outcry at the sentence, and the Attorney General being inundated, we're told, with complaints that it was unduly lenient. I suppose a testament to how, the mood of the public.
Yes, I mean, he wasn't a murderer. A murderer, you normally would, if he'd killed any of those women, without doubt, I'm almost certain that the judge would have given him what is called a full life tariff. That aside, I hope he never walks the streets again. The victims in this case deserve that. The police service deserve that. And so do the public that look to the judicial system to protect them. Look, something has clearly gone wrong within the police service. I am one of the elders in British policing. I've been involved in law and order for 43 years. I'm ashamed at what the British police service is today. We have a lack of discipline on frontline police officers. We have woeful supervision, and we have weak leaders. Those are the three things that have gone wrong within policing. What caused all this, and when did it really start to get bad? It was about 12 years ago when we lost 22,000 frontline police officers. You had less police officers dealing with more. They lost tens of thousands of backroom staff, thanks to this government and Theresa May. And I think then that most police officers just couldn't cope. And what they did is they did their best. But what also happened was the government then realised that taking or removing 22,000 frontline police officers was a huge mistake. So they put pressure on police chiefs to recruit. And our vetting system is an absolute joke. It's appalling. And not only that, Eamonn, and your associate there, we have taken police officers out of training schools. If you manage to wangle yourself through a vetting procedure, what used to happen, and what I did, and many colleagues did, was that we went through 4 months of residential training where we were monitored daily. We lived with other police officers in dormitories, and we knew who the good and bad officers are, and you could have weeded out those that
Norman,
managed to get through.
Norman, listening to you, that wouldn't, if I was a woman needing to report a sexual violation about the police to the police, that wouldn't fill me with huge confidence.
Well, what should fill these with victims, female victims, with confidence is that nobody is untouchable. Do you remember years ago, celebrities thought that they could commit dreadful paedophilia crime, and because of their celebrity status, they were untouchable? They're not, and many were sent to prison and arrested. Here we have some police officers that have committed the most appalling of crimes whilst being entrusted to protect society. There is no hiding place for them, and we've brought them. Don't forget, it's their colleagues that actually investigated and arrested them. So there's probably no better time now than any female that has been raped or a victim of a sexual assault to go to the police and report their crime, because woe betide any officer that does not take that complaint seriously.
Okay. Norman Brennan, we'll leave it there. Norman is a spokesperson. He is the police protection campaigner. Thank you for your time this morning. Thank you.
We're going to turn our attention now to the other huge story of the day. The death toll for the devastating earthquake that hit southern Turkey and northwest Syria on Monday is continuing to rise. The current death toll stands at more than 8,700.
A state of emergency is being declared by the Turkish president in 10 provinces. Although countries worldwide have promised to send aid, it's feared the death toll could reach over 20,000.
Well, earlier we spoke to Attica Rahman from the Global Relief Trust, who's been involved in the rescue mission and trying to pull people out of the rubble.
The first moment I arrived in Antakya, I came across a woman who was screaming for help, and she was telling me that somebody is in the building. It was actually her husband. And when I managed to get in, I found a man who thought I could see. I was checked for blood circulation. I managed to squeeze through a bit more, and I realized this gentleman had passed away. There was another old elderly gentleman, and it broke my heart because he was probably in his 70s, you know, probably close to the end of his life in terms of age. And he was in bed with his wife, and he doesn't know that his wife is next to him dead.
Well, we can speak now to Professor of Structural Geology, Bob Holdsworth, who joins us this morning. Very good morning to you, Professor. Just explain to us a little bit about the science behind why these earthquakes were so devastating.
Good morning. Good morning again. There are many reasons. I mean, these are heartbreaking images that we're seeing, truly daunting devastation. There's a number of coinciding things that have happened here that have made this such a damaging set of earthquakes. The first, and probably the most important, is the fact that these events were really large. I mean, a 7.8 and a 7.5 magnitude earthquake, that is like setting off two 50 megaton atomic explosions, one after another. The biggest explosions that have ever been seen on planet Earth. So these are enormous magnitude events. The second reason is that the two epicenters were really quite shallow, 18 and 10 kilometers respectively. And that means you're very close to the source, the center of the shaking. And so the devastation is very much greater than if the earthquakes are deeper. Third reason is, of course, as we can see from your images here, it's a very densely populated area. And so if you're going to get an event of this size, it's going to cause massive damage, massive loss of life. The fourth reason, and actually perhaps one of the other more significant features, is that the first event, the 7.8 event, occurred in the middle of the night. Most people were at home, sleeping in their beds. They had no opportunity to escape the buildings. And it's the collapse of buildings, as we can see very vividly from the images here, that killed people, not the earthquakes themselves. And then finally, it's also the fact, and particularly this is true in Syria, that the region has been riven by civil conflict for many years, so that many of the buildings are in very poor condition. But first and foremost, it's the sheer magnitude of these events that has led to this devastation.
Tectonics, these plates that are moving underneath the surface of the Earth, and Turkey lying on what is a fault line or a number of fault lines. Just explain to us, why we can expect more of these kinds of things in the future because of where Turkey's placed.
Well, I'm hoping we have a map that's going to appear on the screen. But I mean, basically what you have here is a whole series of plates that come together. The Arabian plate, the Anatolian plate, and the African plate. And you can see on that image there that the Anatolian plate is moving gradually northwards, driving into Eurasia. And it's forcing that wedge-shaped piece of crust called Anatolia out to the west, out into the Mediterranean. And it was a displacement along that pink-coloured fault, the Eastern Anatolian fault, that led to the magnitude 7.8 event. And that then triggered a second event along another fault running east-west called the Surgu Fault. And this sort of triggering is really very common in this region. I should say that Turkey is very used to these kinds of earthquakes. There have been, in the last 50 years, at least 4 really devastating events that have killed thousands, tens of thousands of people. In 1975, 1983, and 1999 and 2020. But these events yesterday were 2 to 3 times bigger than any of those. It's the sheer magnitude that is truly terrifying here.
Well, Professor, thank you so much for explaining all of that to us this morning. Really fascinating, obviously hugely tragic, but we do appreciate your insights there. Professor Bob Holdsworth, he runs the Structural Geology Department, Durham University. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
8:15 is the time. Let's bring you up to date with what else is happening. A man who was found dead with his wife and daughter at Epsom College had been in contact with police about his gun licence only days before the killings. George Pattison, his wife Emma, who was head teacher, and their 7-year-old child were discovered at their home on the school's grounds. Surrey Police confirmed yesterday that a homicide investigation has been launched.
Last-minute talks are being held today between firefighters and their bosses as the Fire Brigades Union tries to strike a new pay deal for workers in the force. If the talks fail, strike dates are expected to be announced as soon as tomorrow. Firefighters voted overwhelmingly to reject a 5% pay offer at the end of last year.
The Church of England could move away from the 1,000-year-old tradition of referring to God as He in the future. It's after priests asked to use gender-neutral terms instead. Religious leaders say a new project on gendered language will begin this spring, with any changes to be approved by the Church's Synod.
Now, Rishi Sunak has held the first meeting of his new cabinet after his overhaul of Whitehall, which saw major changes across multiple departments.
Nadeem Zahawi, who was sacked as Conservative Party chairman, has been replaced by the former Trade Minister Greg Hurwitz, who told us the party's main focus now is to take on the unreformed, in his words, Labour Party in the next general election.
It's not a secret to say that this year's local elections will be a difficult set of local elections for the party. But the important thing is that we do as well as we can and set the platform for a general election next year. Obviously, local elections this year will also be fought on local issues. There's an interesting set of the country that's up for local elections. There's a few directly elected mayors as well. So there'll definitely be an interesting contest this year. But our main focus is going to be on making sure we've got everything in place to win next year's general election, to take on an unreformed Labour Party that lurks behind Sir Keir Starmer. I think 160 Labour MPs out on picket lines last week. You know, it's this sort of thing that we need to bring to the British people, that the Labour Party behind Sir Keir Starmer is an unreformed a party that is still very much characterised by the people that Jeremy Corbyn put in place.
Well, elsewhere, a new department for energy security and net zero has also been introduced, and that will be led by Grant Shapps.
Kemi Badenoch, who was International Trade Secretary, will now take over the Joint Department for Business and Trade.
But the Prime Minister continued to put his support behind Dominic Raab, who still remains Deputy Prime Minister and Secretary of State for Justice.
Joining us now in the studio, our political correspondent Tom Harwood, running his eye over what happened. What do you think, Tom?
Well, this was Rishi Sunak really trying to mould government in his own image. And the big two takeaways we can take out of it are these two souped-up new ministries out of the four that were renamed yesterday. Firstly, energy security and net zero, ESNES, as it's being known in Whitehall. This is about delivering that sort of energy security for this country, a more independent energy supply, a massive mission for the next, not only Parliament, but probably decade in terms of delivering this sort of stuff. One of the big missions that Rishi Sunak has set out. And the second one, perhaps one that's got less attention, is this science, innovation and technology, DSIT, as it's known in Whitehall. This will be the growth ministry to some extent. It's reported, actually, that the initial person that Rishi Sunak wanted for this job was Michael Gove. And Michael Gove, of course, the great reformer in Whitehall. He's managed so many different departments. He's reformed education, he's reformed DEFRA, he's reformed just about every single position he was in. It's probably interesting that actually Rishi Sunak wanted to move him away from his role as levelling up secretary. Perhaps Rishi Sunak there focusing more attention on science, innovation and technology as a lever for growth, rather than this sort of more nebulous concept of levelling up that might be more associated with his predecessor.
So did Michael Gove turn that down? Is that a snub to the PM or a commitment to levelling up himself? Or what's the... I mean, just your... I know you might not know the inside scoop, but your instinct.
Well, it's reported overnight that Michael Gove is very sort of, you know, he's dug into this levelling up brief. He sees it as very important, but also he's never held a great office of state. So the 4 great offices of state in the United Kingdom are the Prime Minister, the Chancellor, the Home Secretary and the Foreign Secretary. Those are the 4 biggest jobs in Cabinet. Michael Gove, although he's held so many different jobs across the Cabinet, he's never held one of those 4. And the word in Westminster is that Michael Gove would only move from his current job were he offered one of the biggest ones rather than a sideways move.
What about Greg Hurwitz, who got the job of party chair? We spoke to him a little bit earlier on this morning. He seemed very positive and upbeat in spite of the polling ahead of the May elections. And an interesting rider alongside him in the form of the Red Wall Rottweiler, Lee Anderson.
Yes, this is almost coming as a balancing ticket in the way that you might see in American politics, where a president and a vice president candidate will run from different parts of the country, different parts of the party. In the same way, we're seeing this with Greg Hurwitz representing a Lib Dem-facing seat in what might be known as the Blue Wall, sort of more liberal metropolitan Tory seat. And then you've got Lee Anderson, of course, representing Ashfield, a very deep Red Wall seat, and of course Lee himself, a former Labour Party councillor, representing the swing that's happened in the country. And these 2 people, if they can work together, it's sort of the only way that you can imagine holding together this very disparate coalition that Boris Johnson managed to win over back in 2019. They've got to hold it together somehow, and this double act might be their best shot.
Could be quite a savvy appointment then, a double appointment from Rishi Sunak there. Tom Harwood, as ever, thank you very much.
Do you think that's a tough coalition to head together? Well, after the break, we're going to be talking about the Church of England and their whole ongoing debate on blessings for same-sex couples. We'll be speaking to campaigner Peter Tatchell on that after this.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back. Eamonn Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamonn. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamonn Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Click that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like.
Absolutely.
On Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you.
GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle.
Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
8:26, we welcome you back to the programme with some breaking news for you. We've just heard in the last few moments that the Ukrainian President, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, will make a surprise first visit to the UK since the Russian invasion of his country. He'll be arriving today and is due to meet with the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, a little bit later on. As you might expect, we will have full coverage of that here on GB News.
And still to come on our programme this morning, from swimming with sharks to hanging out with Navy SEALs at 8:45. Meet best-selling author and real-life action man Greg Hurwitz. He'll tell us what ordeals he's put himself through for a new book, Orphan X.
And Ready, Set, Bake. At 9:20, we'll meet the judges of the Great Sausage Roll-Off. This is the best ones in the country all compete for the top prize. I'm told there are Michelin chefs involved, a few celebrities, and if you like a sausage roll, do you like a sausage roll? I like a sausage roll as well.
But you don't like me eating a sausage roll?
I don't like you eating a sausage roll at the desk because it's crumbly.
It's flaky. It's
awful
difficult to eat in a car.
It's impossible to eat unless you have a plate and you're at a table in an eating
You're taking crumbs out of cars
vicinity.
for months to come if you're doing all that. On bikes, Billy says we need wide footpaths like the ones in Belgium so people don't have to share the main carriageway. Cyril says the safest way is not cycling on or near traffic roads. Cycle lanes are not safe, says Cyril.
Carol says, I'm watching from Spain. Good morning to you, Carol. On children's bikes, they put a long flag on the back of the bike. This is to draw attention to a child. Really good idea. I've seen a few people doing that here, and maybe we'll get one of those.
Barry says, my daughter runs a regular Saturday morning class in Portsmouth. I'm sure helps very young children to be able to control their cycles and be aware of the dangers. Yes, teach them early. Cycling proficiency tests and all that sort of thing. 28 minutes past 8.
Keep those thoughts coming in.
Now, today, the General Synod of the Church of England will debate the motion of same-sex marriage. Now, this follows the recent meeting of the College of Bishops to recommend new services of blessings for same-sex couples.
Well, Ray Addison's been finding out more, and he joins us from Westminster this morning. Good morning to you, Ray. Fill us in on all the arguments here.
Yes, good morning to you both. As you were saying, a meeting of the General Synod is underway today. It started yesterday and will continue probably until tomorrow as the General Synod debate this issue, this motion put forward by the bishops to allow clergy to perform same-sex blessings for couples. And joining me now is Peter Tatchell. He's a human rights campaigner and he's organising a protest here today. Peter, why have you organised this protest?
Blessings are not good enough. Blessings are what the church gives to pets, like dogs and guinea pigs. We, LGBT plus people, we are not pets. We deserve equal marriage. We're simply asking for the church to give same-sex couples the right to marry in their local churches. This right exists for every heterosexual man and woman in Britain, but not for lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender people. It's in defiance of the spirit of the Equality Act. It's discrimination. It's not a Christian value.
So how would you then describe the Church of England's attitude towards same-sex marriage?
Well, it is clearly an act of discrimination. You know, the church has a view that we are sinners and must repent. It won't allow us to marry the person we love. But that right exists for every heterosexual couple, but not for same-sex couples. I think it's very blatant discrimination, which is out of step with the culture and ethos of modern Britain. And the Church of England is the state church. The state church must reflect the state's policy, which is equality for everyone.
So the Synod will be debating a motion put forward by bishops to allow blessings for same-sex marriage. Will that be enough for you?
Absolutely not. To downgrade same-sex couples to the same level as dogs and guinea pigs is a profound insult.
So some people would say, well, hold on, there are other religious institutions where people of same-sex couples could go and have marriage ceremonies performed. Why does the Church of England have to do that as well?
Because it's the state church, and it is supposed to reflect the state's values, which are of equal rights for everyone. You know, the Church of England talks about love and compassion. That does not square with blatant discrimination against same-sex couples. There are parish churches all over Britain who want to marry same-sex couples, but the church leadership is preventing them from doing so. That is domineering, dogmatic, and it's oppressive to its own church members who do believe in the principle of marriage equality.
Peter Tatchell, thank you very much for joining us this morning. I approached the Church of England for a statement, and they issued the following. They said the Church has begun to change. We've realised just how badly we've treated LGBTI plus people. Our eyes have been opened to the harm that we've done. That's the reality that must continue to change.
Church is very busy today.
Thanks,
mate.
Ray.
Thank you. We'll leave it there. Church is very busy, Church of England. They're worrying about what sex God is, or how we should refer to God. He, she, and it. What else are they?
They. It's not. Yeah, they're considering removing his gender. It should be gender-neutral pronoun for God. What do you think about this? We've been asking you all morning.
Kathy says, hands off, this is not going to change. Dean says, I honestly believe that this country's on a slippery slope and the destination does not look good. Maybe hell, Dean. Maybe that's where we're all going.
Jill says, does this country deliberately try to make ourselves look stupid? Dave says, will the same gender neutralism apply to other faiths? Interesting. Will Allah also not have a gender? I suspect Muslims won't be discussing this. Let's also look at what Dean has... Oh, you've read that one. David says, I don't subscribe to he is God or the prime creator is an intelligent energy that makes up everything. So if they use the one, that would be more in line. There we go, somebody who doesn't mind it. There is someone out there who thinks it's an OK idea.
Yeah.
I was wondering if there was anybody.
Well, in Star Trek, the motion picture, the creator was called V'ger, which was the Voyager satellite that went up into space.
Right.
And then eventually got broken down. Its aim was to collect information all the time. And it collected so much information, it assumed it was God. It was the creator.
The creator.
So it referred to itself as the creator.
Our creator, hallowed be thy name. I'm not sure it has the same ring to it. I don't like it. I don't like change.
Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. We could go on forever.
We could. Forgive us our trespasses.
Right.
Anyway, forgive our trespasses. We're going to have a quick break, and when we come back, Chris Akabusi and Emma Wolfe will take you through your Wednesday papers one last time this morning.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today.
from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very good to see you. 8:37 is the time. Eamonn and Isabel at breakfast. What are we going to do now?
We are going to go through the newspapers with the Olympian Chris Akabusi and the writer Emma Wolfe. Who should we start with? Emma, let's start with you. Gordon Brown wading into this disgraceful story, really, about these forced prepayment meters and wants the Ofgem boss to stand down.
Yeah, I mean, you remember the footage that we've seen recently of these debt agents, so-called debt agents, we would call them bailiffs, breaking into people's homes, breaking into poor, vulnerable customers' homes, having a laugh, actually, while they're doing it. This is my favourite bit, some guy says. These are young families, these are mums with babies, these are vulnerable, poorer customers, and they're having these prepayment meters forcibly installed in their homes. Gordon Brown has been saying that the head of Ofgem, Jonathan Brearley, should consider his position. This guy is on over £250,000 a year and has not been doing his job.
Yeah. I think Gordon Brown speaks with great authority. I think he is a genuinely moral man.
I was going to say moral is the word, yeah.
I've spent a lot of time with him privately and I've watched him speak at various things as well. And, of course, his father was a minister.
Yeah.
And you can watch Gordon Brown in full flow as a preacher is very, very good to watch. Very good to watch. But you reckon there's an air of morality about this with Gordon Brown?
Well, absolutely. And I think, Ofgem, what they are meant to do is be the energy regulator. And they're simply, the head of Ofgem has not been doing this job if this has been going on.
Yeah, OK. Now, talking about...
Morality.
Morality and generating things. BP, very good at generating profits. There is a moral question, Chris, behind this as well. I think, if I was the head of BP, yes, you can say you have responsibility to your shareholders and all that sort of thing, right, fair enough. But I think also there is a certain amount of morality to this as to how much profit is acceptable or is decent, or under what circumstances you make that profit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, basically, BP this year have made £730 a second, equating to a £230 billion windfall on the back of the Ukraine-Russian war and the ramifications of that story.
So it wasn't really anything they did.
Yeah, exactly.
They benefited from the circumstance.
No new innovation, no new delivery system. It's just basically where we've been paying at the pump, paying at the house, linking with a previous story, having to decide between heating and eating and having prepaid meters, etc., etc. BP.
See, I would do something like, I would say, let's take 3 billion of that 23 or 5 billion of it, and let's just go to the pumps and say we're going to reduce it all by that amount. By that amount.
We'll say, hang on a minute, we can't pay teachers or nurses what they're asking for. We've got these huge, I mean, you know, grotesque profits.
Maybe.
Yes, I mean, the government's saying we simply cannot give them what they're asking for. We can't cut taxes. Well, then...
Yeah, and to put it in context, I once saw in an economics thing that a billion pound, £1 billion, if you got a million, if a million was 11 days, 1 billion will be 31 years.
Yeah.
So that's the equation. If a million was 11 days, a billion is 31 years. And when you see 23 billion, it's unfathomable amount of money. But the other side is what they are saying is that, hang on, if you take windfall taxes when we are making money, what happens when we're losing money? Do you give us money back? And that's their counter-argument.
OK. Well, you, the court of the people, decide where you want to go on that. More than a quarter of people, Emma, aged over 55, think they'll have to work until their 70s, says the Star.
Yeah, it's a depressing one. About 44% of people are saying that they feel, in the current economic climate, retirement is basically impossible for them.
Yeah.
And that's great if you're, you know, you love what you do,
Correct.
or you can work remotely.
If you have to, if you're forced to.
Yeah, there are lots of people who want to work into their 70s, and, you know, we don't want age discrimination. We don't want people thrown out of the workforce in their 60s or 70s. But the fact that, you know, there are some older people who aren't well, who are
but I think
frailer,
people who have to do physical work. Not like any of us, but people who have to do physical work.
Exactly.
It's just impossible.
To be working into your 70s if you're driving delivery trucks or, you know, stacking shelves or whatever, that kind of thing, or you have specific health conditions. This is really, really worrying. And I think it's it's depressing for a lot of people who do the traditional thing and think they're going to retire around 60, 65, and then look forward to a retirement with, you know, grandchildren or a bit of travel or, you know, just a bit of economic security.
This is where I go back to schools, Chris, and I think if only they had have taught me, if only someone had knocked me over the head and said...
It's not too late.
It is too late when you have no earning power, but when you have your earning power and when you're 20 and you're 25 and 35 and whatever... I never saw the benefit of saving. I saw the benefit of taking out loans and getting car and hire purchase.
Yeah, I think you're right. You were talking about the people who have to, you know, who are forced to, and, you know, there may be labour-intensive work where they can't do. You know, on the back at the moment, we've got a group of people who are late baby boomers who have lived in the good times. I'm a great example of that. Yeah. You know, I've lived in the good times. I've bought a house. My house has increased exponentially. And so we've lived in the good times. And I want to work. We do jobs that, you know, my fingernails, my hands, I mean, are softer than yours. Well, as soft as yours, Isabel. You know, I've never done a hard day's manual labour. So I'm very happy to work in my 70s. But if you were a construction worker and you've been lifting, heavy lifting, or the old days, the miners and the steelworks, when you're 50, 55...
Or even retail, you're on your feet all day long, that kind of thing, where you're really working hard.
Yeah. So I'm with you.
The government talking about raising the state pension to 68, and they're saying we have to because people are living into their 80s and 90s, and we're insisting on providing an NHS that is free at the point of use from birth until death, well into their 90s.
Yeah.
And it's expensive.
It is expensive. I mean, you know, I've sort of given up ever hope of ever reaching. I mean, they just keep raising the pension age. I don't think we'll ever get there.
Sorry, Emma. My challenge with that, though, is the inherent social contract. When you start work when you're 20, and you've got that social contract that when you're 65, you're going to be able to be pensioned off. I think it's a bit naughty with halfway or, you know, in your latter years, oh, actually, you know what, it's not 65, you're all doing so good, it's 72 now. It's a bit naughty, really.
They have to give you a few years' warning, so they do lots of signposting before they do.
I mean, surely there could be a balance so that people could carry on working and also get some kind of support, so they maybe could go part-time or, you know, flexible working.
But then I look, it is what do they say? It's a privilege, that's what it is, to live to retirement age. my father died at my age.
Yeah.
I think, well, that's me. You won't get much more out of
Stop
me.
it.
This year, I'll be
Stop
gone.
it.
I'll be gone pretty
No,
soon.
no, don't give me that,
No,
mate.
but you're right. It's a privilege to grow old.
Yeah.
Of course.
Denied to many.
Denied to many, and you're absolutely right to point that out. Can we talk about the time? It's 8:45, so we're all OK, apparently. We've survived the first mishap of the day. Apparently that happens at 8:18.
Yeah, so the first mishap of the day apparently
This is in the
happens
Express.
around 8:18, with an average of 2 more niggles to come. And the top niggles for people are things like traffic jams, oversleeping, burning their food and tripping over. People blame tiredness, bad night's sleep and just stress, a busy day. But 8:18 is the kind of crunch point. I think if you've had your first niggle, then you've got a couple more
Has
to
anyone
come
had
and it's a bad day.
this morning? Any niggles?
Not yet.
No, nothing terrible's happened, but I'll probably fall over on our way out of the studio.
This awful thing happens to me at all. As soon as I finish work or when I have something to eat or whatever it is, there's like this magnet on my clothes which sort of attracts
crumbs,
juices,
crumbs,
stains, tea, butter, oil, all sorts of things like that as well. And I don't know what does it, but it does. Some people are more prone
they are.
to staining
They are.
than others.
A 2-year-old will do that as well.
It's true. Why me?
I'm not there yet.
Get your bib, Eamonn.
I think that you're probably right.
A napkin tied up behind your neck.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the king. He's on a stamp, but he's ditched the crown. What's going on?
Yeah, I love this picture of the king.
This is in the Express as well.
Yeah, so basically, I mean, he's gone with tradition as much as he's facing left. You can see the continuity of his mum with his cheekbones and his nose.
Yeah.
But what is ditched...
But I still think it's regal, though. Right?
Oh, no, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. I love it. There's no crown, there's no trinkets, there's no embellishment, but he's young, debonair, king of the people. He's got a very gentle smile.
We wouldn't call him young.
Well, yeah, that's young. I mean, he doesn't look like that now, does he?
Yeah, he does.
Nah,
Yes, he does.
No, that's 10 years ago. That's 10 years ago. That's...
Stop it, Chris.
I mean, they may have trimmed off the double chin
He
and
just
things
looks
like
lovely.
that.
And
I'm talking about the king here.
Yes,
That's probably treason. I just said he's a double king, double chin.
But what I'm loving is that he says that he wanted this one because he looks business-like. And when he says business, he's talking about empathy, amiable, and the service to the nation. And I think that comes through. It's a very soft, gentle, soft lens-focused picture of King Charles, and long may he live.
So if any of us could choose the era that we could have immortalised on a coin or whatever...
Of ourselves?
Of ourselves. What would you be in your 20s, 30s, 40s?
Yeah. Oh, of us?
Yeah.
Oh, young as possible.
I peaked
20s.
at about 9. I definitely only got worse.
That's the funny thing. You look back at photos in your 20s, especially Isabel. Do you remember thinking then? You're thinking, oh, I hated myself. I've got a fat bottom. Da 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 da. You look back in your 20s, you think, wow, you were gorgeous. You should have just enjoyed it.
No. Yeah,
we'll do the same in our 80s. We'll look back.
You guys can't relate.
Mid-30s. My mid-30s, mate. There's some pictures. I thought, my gosh, actually, you was in great. Forget the face. The body was in massive shape.
I need to see these pictures.
Mate. My buns, I had these couple of buns, mate. Boom, boom. They were just...
You could have opened a bottle.
I need
to see these pictures.
Even for an Olympian, does everything just start to go south?
There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about that.
Have you not got a six-pack anymore?
Oh, no, I've got a Party 7. You don't remember Party 7? No, I've not got a six-pack anymore. Back in the day, you used to have these big old barrels where you could get beer when you're going for a party. It's called a Party 7.
Okay.
And you get one of those. But
I'd say you're in pretty good shape.
Bless you. But no. When you're in athletes, now I realise, because I didn't realise then, everyone's an athlete. You don't realise that. No.
You
are a specimen.
Yeah, you're a machine.
I mean,
do you think it's worse to have had looks or a body and then lose it than never to have had looks or a body?
No. I mean, that was there, and that person's dead. That was 34 years ago. So, no, I'm really glad to have been through that phase, to have had that phase, and to reflect and say, OK, that's what you can do with the human body. I got my body into the best physical shape as a track and field athlete. But there's more to after that. There's more to that. Leave that.
You've got to enjoy your life.
Yeah,
What was your perfect era? When were you most gorgeous?
So many decades to choose from.
Still rolling.
Still
rocking and rolling.
Decades of physical perfection.
I wouldn't say that.
And it's still going.
Just darn cuteness,
20s.
really, I suppose.
You worked on your personality, yeah? It's all about your personality, Eamonn, yeah? And Man United. We'll go there.
I'd settle for my 20s.
Yeah, I'd settle for my 20s.
But as you say, Emma, we didn't know it.
But at that time, you're riven by doubt and self-doubt and worries and insecurities. And as you get older and you become more philosophical, like Isabel says, you know, we should just be happy with our lives. That's when everything droops and sags and goes grey.
You two have just drooped out of sight now because...
We've got to make way for Greg Hurwitz,
yes.
hugely important best-selling author. It's very exciting, does method writing. We'll do that in a second.
Honestly,
First
Chris,
of all,
you'll be interested in this guy. You really will be interested in
We've got
this
to bring you
guy.
up to date on
Yes.
the top stories as well and some big breaking news as well. Go on, Eamonn.
Well, the Ukrainian president, he's going to be arriving in London today. His first visit to the country since the start of the Russian invasion. President Zelenskyy will meet Prime Minister Sunak as well as address Parliament. It says the UK has stepped up its delivery of lethal aid to Ukraine and preparing to train fighter jet pilots and Marines. There's due to be a joint press conference this afternoon.
The Foreign Secretary says 3 British nationals are missing after earthquakes in Turkey and Syria that have left more than 9,600 people dead. James Cleverly says at least 35 British citizens have been caught up in the disaster. The 7.8 magnitude quake hit on Monday morning, with a second a few hours later. The government's pledging support to Turkey's president, who's declared a state of emergency for 3 months in the 10 worst affected cities.
And as we were just telling you, the image of King Charles, as due to feature on first and second class stamps from April, has been revealed. Royal Mail's directors described it as a defining part of his reign. I don't know if that means the Royal Mail's director's reign or King Charles's reign, but anyway, it's a very simple, effective design and very, very good. And I'm sure your own opinion. Thank you. Now, we're going to tell you the story of the last orphan, right? Because we often have authors on the programme and they talk about their books and their works of fiction and how they imagine life to be, and they're good at telling good stories.
No imagining here.
No imagining here. This man beside us now is the author of this book, and his name is Greg Hurwitz. And Greg, well, he's written a few bestsellers in his time, it has to be said. But Greg, fair to say, Isabel and I couldn't believe it about you. You are different. You like to practice what you preach. You like to sample things. So the story of The Last Orphan, we'll get to the story very shortly, but we want to say that you experience, if you have an action scene in this, you will have experienced that action scene.
That's right. I wasn't sure it was going when you told me I was different. I'm glad it took a positive bend. Yeah, I try to give the reader a front row seat to the action, which means I do everything myself. I've been up in stunt airplanes. I've gone undercover into mind control cults. When I was first trying to envision the Orphan X series, I snuck onto demolition ranges with SEALs to blow up cars. I've got on all the guns that Orphan X uses, but also I trained a bit in mixed martial arts fighting. And part of that is so that, you know, when I was getting choked out, let's just say, I can describe it in a way. There's a kind of specific claustrophobia that happens, that if I experience that, I can write it differently than using a sort of cliche that I myself have collected from other books or for other movies. So I always want to give the readers a sense that this is really happening and kind of carry them into the story.
And that gives, I suppose, your books a certain kind of authenticity, which is why so many multi-million copies have been sold around the world. Does it make it longer, harder, you know, to write these? You have to go off and do all of the you know, bits and bobs before you can write them.
I wonder if I actually have to do it or if it's just really fun to go off on all these adventures and get myself into trouble.
Well, yeah, I think you're doing that, and I get the whole point that you're giving it an authenticity that others couldn't lend to it, because you could cheat this. You could cheat this very easily. And I think you're putting pressure on other authors as a result. We were talking earlier about certain actors who are method actors. And you're a sort of method author, really, then.
I'll take it. That sounds like a lovely appellation.
There's that story where Dustin Hoffman says to Sir Laurence Olivier and the boys for Brazil, Sir Laurence, how are you going to act this torture scene out, or whatever? How are you going to, what is your experience of all of this? What are you going to do? He says, I'm going to act, dear boy. That's what I'm going to do. But not for you.
Not for me. I will say, though, when I'm in a book, look, I spend more waking hours with Orphan X than I do with my family or friends, right? I mean, I'm in that world. And it's funny, because if I'm writing a book that takes place in winter, if it's in the summer, I'll get a little bit tangled up, because I get pretty far into it. And that's the good part, is when all I'm thinking about is
Tell us about the orphans in this series of books.
So Evan Smoke he was a scrawny 12-year-old foster kid who nobody wanted, and was taken out of the foster home at the age of 12 and trained up to be an assassin. And at a certain point, it's for a black program buried deep in the DOD. And he's meant to go places the U.S. cannot go and execute missions the U.S. is not allowed to do. And of course, if he gets killed, he's fully expendable, because nobody would miss him and nobody really wants him. And at a certain point, his own moral compass becomes misaligned with what he's asked to do, and he goes on the run. And so the orphan program from the beginning of the series is pursuing him. But in the meantime, he has an encrypted line, 1-855-2-nowhere, and anyone can call that if they're in desperate need, if they have nowhere else they can turn. And it's somebody who's just being terrorized by another person or group of people, and he will come and sort of act as a pro bono assassin to help them, all the while he's fleeing the very program that created him.
Wow, where do you come up with these ideas? I mean, you were inspired with the Bond movies, the Bourne movies as well, and you've had movies made out of your books, and some are in the works at the moment.
Yeah, I have a few things on the screenwriting front, but I grew up reading and loving all those series like everybody else. I loved Jack Reacher, Jason Bourne, James Bond, and I really wanted to think about, I mean, I was afraid to write the first book in this series. I wrote 4 other novels first. I kept putting it off because I wanted to make sure I really had a handle on this character, Evan Smoke, this lead. We remember characters. You know, if you stop someone on the street and ask them what their favorite James Bond action scene is, they might hesitate, but everybody knows how he likes his martini. Right? It's the aspects of character. And there was so much for me before I started to write this that I thought, what is an Evan Smoke action scene? What's an Evan Smoke story? What's the dialogue like? What are the things that will really differentiate it and make it different? And so it took me a while. There's some amazing talent and stories out there and protagonists. And I thought I really wanted to be ready to hope that I might have a character.
And just briefly, Greg, why are you in the country? Are you doing signings for this?
I'm doing signings. I'm going to be at Goldsboro Books tomorrow night. That should be really fun.
Yeah,
and a lot of interviews and signings and running around eating Maltesers and doing the British thing.
Is that a very British thing? Maltesers, hadn't realised. Greg, it's been an absolute delight. Thank you for popping in and seeing us. I don't need to wish you luck. I'm sure it's going to do incredibly well. Greg Hurwitz, thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you very much, Steve. Thank you. Look, we're going to take a break there. We've got Labour's Andrew Gwynn talking about President Zelenskyy and his first trip to Britain since Russia's war on Ukraine, right after this.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Metropolitan Police Officer David Carrick's 30-year sentence is to be reviewed for being too lenient.
Hello there, very good to see you. It's 1 minute past 9. It's Wednesday, the 8th of February. You're tuned into Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster, leading the news this morning.
The judge has said that David Carrick took monstrous advantage of women and acted as though he was untouchable. The now disgraced police officer's 30-year sentence will be reviewed by the Attorney General.
3 British nationals are amongst those still missing, and the death toll continues to rise following the earthquake in Turkey and Syria. The number of victims, 9,600 at the moment. Children and families have been pulled from the rubble overnight as the rescue mission for survivors continues.
And a shake-up of Rishi Sunak's cabinet as Prime Minister merges UK trade and business and creates departments for energy security and net zero.
I think Lee is a fantastic asset for the Conservative Party. Of course, we've got other deputy chairmen, we've got vice chairman as well, so it's not just me and him. We've got a great team at Conservative headquarters. We've got a really fantastic team of staff, all dedicated to making sure that Rishi Sunak wins next year's general election.
You were looking at and hearing the new Conservative chairman, Greg Hurwitz, talking about how he thinks his deputy, Lee Anderson, and the team will work together.
And it's been dubbed the X Factor of sausage rolls. We are heading down to the Red Lion pub in southwest London, where the great sausage roll-off is being held, discovering the best ones in the country.
And thanks very much for getting
I might head there myself.
Good idea.
Sounds delicious.
TV views, gbnews.uk about sausage rolls.
Now, our top story this morning, Rishi Sunak has held the first meeting of his new cabinet after his overhaul of Whitehall, which saw major unexpected changes across multiple departments.
Nadeem Zahawi, who was sacked as the Conservative Party chairman, has been replaced by that man, the former Trade Minister, Greg Hurwitz, who told us the party's main focus now is to take on what he termed the unreformed Labour Party in the next general election.
It's not a secret to say that this year's local elections will be a difficult set of local elections for the party. But the important thing is that we do as well as we can and set the platform for a general election next year Obviously, local elections this year will also be fought on local issues. There's an interesting set of the country that's up for local elections. There's a few directly elected mayors as well. So there'll definitely be an interesting contest this year. But our main focus is going to be on making sure we've got everything in place to win next year's general election, to take on an unreformed Labour Party that lurks behind Sir Keir Starmer. I think 160 Labour MPs out on picket lines last week. You know, it's this sort of thing that we need to bring to the British people, that the Labour Party behind Sir Keir Starmer is an unreformed a party that is still very much characterised by the people that Jeremy Corbyn put in place.
Slipping in that word unreformed.
Yeah, we'll put that to Labour in a sec, won't we?
Tom Harwood is with us now. Tom, what does he mean by unreformed?
This is the message the Conservative Party is trying to put across. They recognise that Sir Keir Starmer has done a fairly good job in sort of presenting the Labour Party as something that has changed, as a party that is no longer the same sort of party as Jeremy Corbyn led. And it's clear that some of the people that Keir Starmer has appointed are not Corbynite, but what the Tory party want to say is that the party behind him, those same MPs that were elected in 2019, they're still MPs of Corbyn's ilk.
Let's go to one. Let's go to one. Let's look at the unreformed Andrew Gwynn. He's been termed as one of them. Andrew is the Shadow Minister for Public Health. It's going to be a big surprise when we see him. Can we see him? Can we see him? We'll see him as if by magic. Andrew, you were disappeared there from us, but
I am here.
Greg Hans, he just loved throwing this word out, unreformed, about you lot today. Do you see yourself as unreformed?
Well, look, he would say that, wouldn't he? But the fact of the matter is the Labour Party under Keir Starmer is changed. We're ready for government. We're serious about governing. We're putting together the policy framework for the next Labour government. And we've got the Tories on the run. After 13 years, this tired, clapped out government, they can have as many rebrands and reshuffles as they want. They are tired, they're out of ideas, they're clapped out, and the Labour Party is fighting fit, and we're raring to go.
Well, look, we heard from the Prime Minister at the beginning of the year. He set out his 5 ambitions for the country. He really wants to try and tackle those NHS waiting lists. The Institute for Fiscal Studies has published a report today, and that is fairly damning of that plan for the PM. It says the number of patients waiting for care will more or less flatline for the next 12 months. Would it be better under Labour?
It would be better under Labour, because remember where we were in 1997, a very similar picture. We inherited an NHS on its knees. We inherited record waiting times, record waiting lists. And in the 13 years of that Labour government, through investment, through reform, we drove down waiting times and waiting lists to historic lows. We had a guarantee that you would be seen within 18 weeks, not 18 months. And that's the kind of ambition we need for our country again. So what we've said is, in the short term, we would use extra capacity across the health and care system, including in the private sector, as we did before, while we build up that capacity in the NHS, training those extra doctors, nurses, healthcare workers and professionals that we need to put the capacity back into the NHS and to put the NHS back on a sustainable footing.
But these waiting lists, they're being hindered by the strikes, aren't they? We're seeing a number of appointments and operations being delayed because of them. And as we heard from Greg Hurwitz, the new chairman of the Conservative Party, there were 160 Labour MPs out on picket lines last week.
Well, look, these are Rishi Sunak and Steve Barclay's strikes. All they've got to do is sit down and negotiate. That's all we're asking. That's all the unions are asking. Sit down and have talks. Come to a compromise. The unions have their position, the government has their position, and actually there's a large area where common ground can be found. But that takes the leadership of Rishi Sunak and Steve Barclay to sit down and negotiate. If they did that, the unions have already said they would call off the strikes. Why won't they?
Look, it's a historic day in Parliament. President Zelensky is making a surprise visit to the UK. He'll be meeting the Prime Minister. He'll also be addressing Parliament. I presume you will be there. What does that mean for the country, for you personally, for Ukraine?
I think it's a momentous day. Look, we, across the political spectrum, stand fully with the Ukrainian people and indeed with the Ukrainian president, who has faced some of the most atrocious hostilities from the Russian state. The invasion, the illegal invasion of Ukraine is something that we don't just all strongly object to. We are being practical with our assistance to Ukraine, and it is brilliant that President Zelensky can come to the United Kingdom today to see some of his troops being trained up, to address members of Parliament. It is a historic occasion, and it reaffirms the totality of the United Kingdom across the whole of the political spectrum, standing alongside the people of Ukraine and with them until they get the freedom from the oppression of Russia and the aggression of Russia. We stand with Ukraine is the message that should ring out from Westminster today.
Unconditionally and for whatever time it takes then, because, Andrew, a lot of people will be saying, how much is this going to cost us? And President Zelensky wouldn't be coming, he wouldn't be addressing Parliament unless he wants to keep that interest going. He wants to tell people how bad things are. That means more pressure on us to be there for Ukraine. Will we always be there shoulder to shoulder?
I hope so. I think so. And I would expect so, because this is the first real act of aggression on the European continent for a very long time. And as serious players in the civilised world, we stand against aggression and the brutality of the Russian state against the Ukrainian people cannot be tolerated in a civilised world. So we have to stand firm across NATO, across the Western world with our allies to say what Russia has done and is doing in Ukraine is illegal and it is unacceptable. And we will stand with the people of Ukraine until their freedom is found.
Andrew Gwynn, Shadow Minister for Public Health, thank you very much indeed. We've still got Tom Harwood in the studio. Just want a couple of words from you, Tom, on this historic visit from Zelensky. Only the second time he's left his war-torn country, the first to Washington.
Yes, it's interesting because there had been some reports earlier this week in the press that there was a visit to Brussels planned, to the European Parliament. But this was something that was surprisingly coming out in the press. There was a tweet from the European People's Party that was then swiftly deleted. It seems like this organisation was weakened, and it was for Thursday speculated that Zelensky might go to the European Parliament. Interestingly, in the UK and the US, the first two visits he was making, it was much more sort of kept under wraps, much more securely tightened. And I wonder if that speaks to a bit of the relationship that the UK and the US, as the two largest single donors to Ukraine, as these countries that go back a fairly long time with the Ukrainian people, have with regard to this. It's notable that the UK is that second visit from Zelensky. And also, we're hearing today that the Prime Minister will be announcing further training for Ukrainian troops, not just those on land, but also at sea and in the air. That for the first time, Marines will be trained, Ukrainian Marines in this country, and jet pilots too. This is part of a three-stage visit today. Zelensky first to Downing Street, then speaking in Parliament, and then going to visit some Ukrainian troops being trained by the British military. Of course, the British military has been training Ukrainian troops since 2014, since that first partial invasion of Ukraine by Russia and the annexation of Crimea, of course.
And let's not forget all those families up and down the country who've taken in Ukrainian refugees in the last year. This will mean so much to them, to those people also trying to set up a new life here. And I think people living in London, they're going to see a lot of security today. All right, Tom, thanks very much indeed.
Appreciate it. The time, 30 minutes past 9. What else is happening today? Well, a man who was found dead with his wife and daughter at Epsom College has been in contact with police about his gun licence only days before the killings. George Pattison, his wife Emma, who was head teacher at the school, and their 7-year-old child were discovered at their home on the school's grounds. Surrey police confirmed yesterday that a homicide investigation has been launched.
Last-minute talks are being held today between firefighters and their bosses as the Fire Brigades Union tries to strike a new pay deal for workers in the force. If the talks fail, strike dates are expected to be announced as soon as tomorrow. Firefighters voted overwhelmingly rejected a 5% pay offer at the end of last year.
Church of England could move away from the 1,000-year-old tradition of referring to God as He in future. It's after priests asked to use gender-neutral terms instead. Religious leaders say a new project on gendered language will begin this spring, with any changes to be approved by the Church's synod.
Had your breakfast? Are you thinking about breakfast? Oh, we're going back to that. Yeah, get back to God.
God being a He, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, I don't believe that. After priests asked for gender-neutral language, how many priests? You know, I can't believe the top of the priority list within the Church of England is, oh, that God bloke. We shouldn't be referring to him as he.
Well, they're so worried, aren't they, about alienating, offending, that they might end up throwing the bath out with the baby water, as it were. We've been getting lots of views on it, I have to say, all morning, and vast majority of you...
It's the baby out with the bath water.
You don't get it?
The bath out with the baby water.
What?
You said...
Did I mix my metaphor? Throw the baby out with the bathwater. That's what I meant.
Yes, that's
what I meant. What did I say? Something else? You know what I meant. Oh, gosh. It's been a long morning. Anyway, we're thinking about sausage rolls. It is everybody's favourite
I like a nice
snack.
sausage roll.
What's not to like?
And you know what? I'm not discriminatory.
Anything will do.
Whether I should have tomato ketchup or brown sauce with it. I can be in a brown sauce mood or I can be in a ketchup mood.
Yeah.
Or I can be in a nude mood.
No sauce.
No sauce whatsoever.
Sometimes not saucy is the key. We'll be talking all things sausage roll after this break. Don't go anywhere.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamonn Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes. Already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamonn. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamonn Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Good to see you again. Well, you see, look, I'll just explain, right? We're doing a night of sausage rolls coming up, and Isabel couldn't wait.
I was so hungry. I've eaten the props.
Yours are hotter than mine.
Well, what can I say? I'm so sorry.
We're getting to that. We're establishing satellite communications over to Barnes, where this is all happening. But before that, we're talking about potholes, right?
A few potholes in Barnes, I believe.
There's potholes everywhere, everywhere. And one road in Birmingham might just be the worst in the whole country.
Yeah, when it comes to fly tipping, burnt-out cars and potholes, wow, what an accolade. Crawford Street in the Saltley area of the city has it all. And we sent our West Midlands reporter, Jack Carson, to take a look.
You might be mistaken for thinking this road is the set of a new blockbuster apocalypse film. But this is Crawford Street in Birmingham. Plagued by cars left stripped in the street, potholes and fly tipping, this might be the most neglected street in the country. It's only 0.2 miles in length, but drivers using this cut-through have to battle with the conditions. Jerry Moynihan is a community activist and has been documenting the condition of the area before reporting his findings to the council.
Now, since 2018, I've been in contact with the council about trying to get the fly tipping removed, the abandoned cars, the cars that are burnt out. This is a place where people continuously come to dump their rubbish. As the local businesses confirm, there are frequent fires here. Now, when the fly tipping goes up in flames, the local fire service has to come out. That's a minimum of £500 per time. It's not just the cost of clearing it, it's the cost of not clearing the fly tipping, because some other service, such as the fire service, has to come out and it's a cost to them.
The amount of fly tipping is an issue for businesses based on the road too. Tahir Hussain works at a salvage yard.
They've been flying tipping on this road. It's been over 7 years, 10 years. I've been here for 15 years, but it's been going for a long time. And Birmingham City Council are doing nothing at all to help with that. We pay our rates on time, but the thing is, we see a state of this road. You're talking about every week we email them, but they're not coming back to us at all.
Last year, a man who dumped business waste on the street was ordered to pay more than £1,400 after a successful court prosecution by Birmingham City Council. But Jerry Moynihan stresses this problem engulfs the inner city.
I think, unfortunately, this is an inner city area. It's an area of deprivation. I don't think the council are inclined to do anything. As you've seen with the just short distance from here, the local youth playground area, it's fly tipped. It's been blocked off. I think the area is just generally being neglected.
In response to the issues on Crawford Street, a Birmingham City Council spokesperson said, "We are working hard to improve the condition of the city's roads and carry out regular inspections. We aim to clear fly tipping within 2 working days, but white goods can take up to 14. If we have evidence, we will prosecute." For now, this road remains a hotspot for waste, and the local campaign for due and proper clearance continues. Jack Carson, GB News, Birmingham.
Bloomin' disgrace, all of that. Now, we're nearly out of time, but we're going to cross live via satellite to the Red Lion pub. This is Isabel's local in Barnes. Yeah?
It is. It's good to the sausage roll-off, which sees chefs from across the nation compete to create the best one. We're joined by the managers Claire Morgan and Massey Mushfiq. Good morning,
Claire,
to
Massey.
you. Tell us about this.
Good morning. Good morning.
Tell us all about it.
So tonight we're super proud, really excited to have the Great Sausage Roll back after a 2-year break. 16 incredible contestants from all over the UK, 5 unbelievable judges, and a massive crowd. We're all here for one thing, to create the best sausage roll. And
But
to
how
make
many
it a
variations, Massey, can you have on a sausage roll?
Endless possibility.
Okay, so what constitutes a good sausage roll for you guys? What are you looking for? I mean, we've got one here. It's, you know, it's warm and fluffy and crumbly and everything you could wish for. You know, what are the criteria?
So I guess the criteria is it's got to be a really good, fantastically good marriage between a buttery, delicious pastry, which tonight will no doubt be decorative, and a really good filling, an original filling which represents who you are, your creativity, your love, your passion, your care, and the ingredients will show that and reflect that tonight, hopefully.
And do people, Massey, do they bring their sausage rolls already prepared and heat them, or do they make them in your pub?
So they actually just come in, bring their ingredients and make it here. So that's the competition aspect of it. Who makes the better sausage roll in-house?
And so does that mean there's going to be a surplus of sausages in southwest London later, sausage rolls, and if people are, you know, passing by that corner of London, they can come and have a feast this evening?
They can, as long as they're prepared to donate to a wonderful charity, Hospitality Action. We've really suffered in this industry over the last 2 years, and we are raising a lot of money, hopefully, for this wonderful charity who helps people like us and our colleagues get back on their feet again after a tough time. So if they're prepared to dig deep, come and have sausage rolls tonight.
Good. Having your cake and eat it, having your sausage roll and eating it. Hope you make lots of money.
Yeah, have a lovely time.
But Claire and Massey, tell me what your ideal ingredients would be. You must have a favourite. You know, you could make a sweet sausage roll.
I like a bit of an onion in it.
Yeah, but you could have apple in it or something. It could be, so you could go sweet or sour or spicy or whatever. So Claire, what would your ingredients be? What tickles you?
Well, I'm Welsh, so for me, it's got to showcase me and my heritage. So it's got to be leek, a really good pork from a good Welsh butcher's, leeks, and I'd probably do I'd catch on to what I've seen in the past and do a sweet touch at the end. My two children, Noah and Kate, really love a Welsh cake, so I would finish it off with currants and sultanas and raisins at the end. So it'd be
a lot in there. Beat that, Massey.
Mine's going to be completely different.
We've
not your
got to
traditional
be
pork.
really brief.
No, it's I like the odd one, a beef sausage roll.
All right, brilliant. Listen, Massey, Claire, have a fabulous day. It sounds like a lot of fun. Thank you very much indeed. Goodbye from us. We say goodbye to everybody at home as well. Hope you have a lovely Wednesday. Thank you. And coming up next, Tom Harwood.
After we eat our...
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you know, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage